We'll be taking your calls in just a few moments. The numbers will be looking.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this roll for a bit. Right, I'm just going to let this roll for a bit. I'm going to eat my dinner. It's an hour and 26 minutes. I'm 13 minutes in. I've got to let you listen to a bit more of this. Okay.
Listed throughout the show at the bottom of the screen, and it'll, like I said, it will be taking in about 5 minutes. Before then, we're going to run a clip of some BBC coverage from last night's election.
Let's hear the latest forecast on the basis of that, Peter.
Right, David, let's build up the forecast on the map. Here we go. The Conservatives, 351, 42. Look at them pile up there. 42 down on what they were before. The Labour Party, 249, up 40. The Alliance, 26, down 1. And the others, 24 plus 3. Let's just split the Alliance in two and see what we're forecasting currently the Liberals and the SDP will take. 18 seats, the Liberals, we say, down 1. The SDP continuing with the 8 they had in the old Parliament. The others, 24, up 3. We're forecasting the Scottish National Party wins in Scotland. Now, take a spin inside the new chamber of the House of Commons, and let's see what it looks like. There we are, inside the Commons chamber. There's Mrs. Thatcher on the government benches, through the winning post with 351. The Labour Party, Mr. Kinnock, on 249. Add all the opposition together, subtract them from the Conservatives, and you get a forecast Conservative majority now, David, of 52.
52.
You just mentioned something about Monty Python type coverage. What do you think of that?
One thing I've noticed since the last election in Britain is the increasing dominance of British politics by what we call American type style. Opinion polls on every front page and leading every news broadcast. Computer graphics, photo opportunity politicians who never really give speeches or have press conferences. I don't think that deserves the name of American myself, because America is a thoughtful and democratic country, but the style of Razzmatazz party probably originated here too, and it's taken over even the BBC. My God, I mean, can you imagine anti-BBC behaving like a discotheque on election night?
That coverage seemed to have a lot more emotion in it than you find on most U.S. networks.
I guess just an element of excitement. I mean, certainly one of the things that I missed being over here is really the experience of staying up and getting quite excited even at home about the progress of the release of the election figures.
Yes, it's a myth to think that the British are phlegmatic in other nations.
Just wait till we get at one another's throats later.
Our first call is from Chesterton, Indiana. You're on.
Oh, hi there. Well, it looks like the left wing is in trouble all over. They're having their problems here, too. And I see that, Chris, you're in such a snit, about Maggie. And I suppose we can expect you to be even more brattish than usual this evening. Anyway.
Do I know you?
Callaghan sometime.
You seem to know me.
Well, what I really did want to ask a question. We have a party here in this country called, what is it? Oh, Democratic Socialists. We have several of them in our Congress on the Democratic side. Do you suppose those are social Democrats? Sort of a reverse English there, but they sound very much the same. They're not identified here as in your country. You see, we really do have three parties. It's assiduously avoided whenever this is mentioned. I think I see nothing wrong with three parties, but I think it's rather has not really sinister overtones, but childish overtones, shall we say.
Thank you very much, caller.
Well, the Democratic Socialists of America doesn't have the resources to run an election campaign. But you're right in saying that a number of board members of the AFL-CIO and a number of members of Congress, including quite a number of members of the Black Caucus, for example, will come to a DSA convention or will endorse a DSA motion for debate at the Democratic Convention. What the DSA says it's like is like the Labour Party was in Britain about 70 years ago. That's to say, the Labour wing of the Liberal Party. It took a very long time before they built up enough strength to declare a Labour Party on their own, and I think it will take, well, it won't be a short time, at any rate, before the Democratic Socialists of America are able to do the same.
Martinez, California, you're on.
Yes, Martinez, California.
Martinez, okay, sorry. Go right ahead.
Yes, I just know if you think there might be any long-term effects towards the weapon discussions that will be coming up in Europe. And a second question, do you think that England may be more likely than they have in the past to back up the United States in its foreign policy decisions, such as last year's attack in Libya and the oil situation in the Persian Gulf?
Okay, I'll kick off on that if I may. First of all, in terms of weapons, I'd like to go back to some of the opening comments that Chris was making, because I think that he's quite right that there is much less enthusiasm in Britain for nuclear weapons, for the prospect of threats of their use and so on, than is common certainly in some of the media in the United States, and that while the Conservative Party certainly has fought on a program of retaining US bases, and they're also committed to continuing the orders for Trident weapons in Britain. I think that even there, that even within the ranks of the Conservative Party, and particularly amongst younger people, there's a much greater willingness to look very seriously at issues of disarmament than will be common in the United States. So that to come directly on this matter to the first part of the question, I think that it would be wrong to take the kind of endorsement that one got through the British election of the Conservative Party's policies as being gung-ho support for American lines on this. And certainly I don't think that while one will get a complete endorsement of, for example, all the current administration's moves in the Middle East. Even the most conservative and even the most bellicose of people in Britain look pretty moderate if put up against some of the people on the right in the United States.
The Labour Party was for unilateral disarmament,
Yes.
nuclear weapons.
The Labour Party would have made Britain nuclear-free in its defence policy, which would mean two things in our case. It would mean, first, removing your bases, if I can call them that. You didn't have a chance to vote for them being there, and nor did we, but so let's say they are USAF bases from British soil. And it would also involve giving up the pretense that Britain could independently have a nuclear war with the Soviet Union on its own, which is a pretense we currently, and at great cost, maintain. I thought that the connection made by the questioner between the Libya raid and the bases was a good one, and I'll just say this about it. The reason why public opinion in Britain was so strongly against that participation, British participation in the Libya raid last year, was this, and it surprised many people how large the repudiation was. Until the raid took place, not many British people knew how many American bases there were in Britain. It's not usually discussed by the government how many there are, and weren't aware that the United States could launch a strike on another country using British territory, with Parliament and the press being unaware of it. And since that realization has deepened, if you will, and extended, people have begun to ask, well, when did we sign this agreement? When was the treaty? When did Parliament vote to have it? Found, of course, that there was never any such decision democratically validated, and that's not going to go away as an issue in Britain, no matter who is Prime Minister.
Are those bases shared bases?
No, they're USAF bases.
Just United States.
And they still
Let's go to
have them,
Burbank, Illinois. You're on. Burbank, you there? Guess not. Labor said during this election, I believe, that there was an ever-widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. Expand on that a little bit.
Yes, I'll address it
By all
to start
means.
off with, if I may. There are certainly there have certainly been shifts in the distribution of income in Britain. Quite what significance one's to read into them, I think, isn't too clear. Why do I say that? Well, basically, the strategy behind the Conservative government in Britain is to try to shift Britain into a system which will generate wealth better, which will give incentives, and we're certainly on the part of the Conservative government. There's a strong belief that you'll get a trickle-down effect from moves in that direction. And in addition, there is the belief that it was important to do something pretty radical to redress the slow relative economic decline that Britain has been suffering over quite a long period of time.
Right, okay. Let me just address this economic decline you talked about. The people who owned the factories in Britain refused to invest any money into those home factories. They continued to try and invest in factories overseas, making the same fucking products that people in Britain were making, right? They refused to invest in the infrastructure in Britain. You know, motorways, coal mining, steel production, but they continued to invest in those same things in other countries overseas. This is why the people of Britain looked at the Conservative Party and says, what the fuck are you doing? You keep saying you're trying to build Britain up, but you give tax cuts to people who then take those tax cuts and invest it overseas. You've seen this same thing in America. We learned this from Reagan and Reaganomics and all that. Yeah, we were going to become a globalised society. But you can't just go from a home state society to a globalised society by just putting all the money you make out of your own country and investing it overseas. You have to reinvest. You have to update. You have to... I mean, the people inventing the new technology and how to make mining and car production and steel production, cheaper, that technology was learned, over 10, 15 years and, perfected here in Britain. And then instead of you converting your steel production to that more equitable, cheap production, you sold the technology to another company and shut your own steel production down. It didn't make any fucking sense to the people of Britain. It doesn't make any sense to the people in America, but that's what's happened over the last 30, 40 years. 1987. 30, 40 years. The people who owned the factories you worked in America, they didn't upgrade your factory. They built a new factory in fucking Asia. Why? Not because they couldn't build a new factory in your town. But after building a factory worth $1 billion, they would still have to pay you $40 fucking dollars an hour. If they built that $1 billion factory in fucking Asia, they would build it for, $750 million. And they would pay those factory workers a third of your wages. So they seen that over time it was cheaper to build that factory over there and pay those people a third of your wage and shut your factory down. And you complained and people says it's just economics. No, they invented that economics. They invented globalism. They could have continued to make steel and cars in America and ship them to Taiwan and fucking Korea and just not build a factory in Taiwan. Do you think these people in Taiwan had the ability to build $1 billion car fucking or steel production? No. They didn't even know what technology we were using. We sold them the technology. We took it over there and gave it to them. Now, our countries could have said for the next 10, 15, 20 years, we can keep running. We can upgrade and maybe get another 30, 40 years out of our industry. But they decided that economics being where it is, it's cheaper for us to move our new technology over there and build a new factory in Taiwan. And just let the old factory in America shut down. We're not going to rebuild the factory. We're not going to put an electric furnace in. We're just going to leave you with the old coal furnace, and we're going to sell the electric technology furnaces to fucking Korea, Taiwan, and stuff like that. and pay them a third of the wages that you fucking pay. And it's all going to be automised as well, so they're only going to have a third of the fucking people running it. So they've saved a third of the fucking people, and they've saved a third of the wages for the people they do have to have there running the factory, and we just build the robots and put the robots in there. This is what fucking happened, right? It wasn't a thing where it had to be done. The government could have said this technology cannot be exported. You know, like they said with the computer technology. You remember that? They could have done the exact same fucking thing with electric fucking furnaces when we developed them in the West. They could have made that technology that can't be exported. It's got to stay in the country. But they didn't. Why? Because the people who run these companies paid all your politicians to say, don't do that. Don't do that. We'll give you, 100 million in your next election, Mr. President. That's why it never happened. Got nothing to do with what had to happen, or this kind of. It would eventually happen, but by the time that we had, used that technology for a while and improved on it, we would have been able to have the money to fucking re-educate people, put them through college, get them into engineering, physics, and we could be the fucking wonders of the fucking world. We could be the people making all the chips. We could be the people making all the solar fucking panels. But if you look at the people that run our businesses, they have refused to let the government invest money in fucking solar. They've refused to let the government invest money in educating the populace and how to become engineers and scientists and people who know how to make chips. No, that all fucking happened in the Asian countries, where they just thought, you know what? Well, the only way to beat fucking America and Europe, we have to fucking look at the future. The future is technology. The future is computers. We're going to fucking build computer fucking science labs. We're going to train our young people. We're going to beat the fucking, the West at their game. And that's what happened. We could have fucking kept fucking, electric fucking steel furnaces off of fucking Asia. We could have kept it out of Asia. We could have kept it for another fucking 50 years. We could be making all the chips and all the fucking solar panels in the world and the windmills and all that. We could have been doing that, but no. The fucking assholes who ran the company says it's cheaper for us right now just to fucking do it over there. And we're going to pay the government to allow us to do it. You know what I mean? That's what fucking happened. Thatcher and Reagan started that fucking process of, let business move everything out of your countries to overseas. The stock market, billionaires, that's who we've got to concentrate on. They're the people, because trickle-down economics, they're going to employ, they employed fucking millions of people, they employed them in fucking Asia, not in fucking America or Britain. They did employ millions of people. Trickle-down economics worked for fucking Asia, didn't work for fucking Britain or Europe or fucking America. Wasn't intended to.
No, I think there was a great deal of self-conscious awareness about the fact that if one was going to make a more market-based society work effectively, this would involve a greater degree of economic inequality. But, and here is the big but, the argument was that once this had run for a bit, one would get benefits which could be spread more widely through the community, and that one would then actually have wealth to help those people who couldn't help themselves. So what I would want to do very much on this is, on the one side, to bite the bullet and say, yes, there is, in certain respects, a deliberate decision to go for a form of social organization which has a greater degree of inequality in it, but where this is seen as being an engine for the production of other things that are worthwhile. I want to relate these two things together such that, if Chris possibly says that the inequality that's involved in making such a move is unacceptable, I'd be interested to see whether there is some other engine which could be hoped to generate the more positive consequence.
Well, for now, what I'd like to say is, and draw to the attention of the audience, is this, that, and Jeremy deserves credit for being frank about it, and so does Mrs. Thatcher. What what makes Thatcher a Thatcherite is not that she accepts the fact that Britain is ruthlessly divided by class and income, and also wealth ownership, very highly stratified way and always has been, but that she self-consciously praises the idea. That is new. That is also why she's so widely disliked, but it's also why she deserves credit, in my opinion, because she doesn't pretend that it can or should, in her own view, be otherwise. And that's what we talk about when we do Thatcherism. So I think that's a baseline at which to stop till we get another question.
Can I come back on this? Because
Well,
I think that on the topic of inequality, one's got to distinguish between inequality for its own sake and inequality of a sort which it's argued will emerge in a well-working market-based economy. Now, I mean, certainly there are all kinds of forms of inequality that one may get in many, many places, which Mrs. Thatcher and I would guess most of the people in the Conservative Party who favour her views really aren't very keen on it at all. I mean, some of the people who are more keen on a paternalistic interpretation of conservatism would like certain other kinds of inequality, but where possibly traditional landlords would have the job of looking after their retainers, who, in return for touching their forelocks, would then be looked after a bit. There's been a deliberate move to grasp an attempted solution to Britain's problems. And I think that it isn't really enough just to stop by saying, these things have undesirable features to them. Sure, but the situation that Britain is in has undesirable features. Consider, I mean, if you went from, both of us are relatively young, but I think within the lifetime of both of us, if one went to countries on the continent of Europe when we were young, one would be struck by them being in various ways kind of quite charming but a bit decrepit. If one goes abroad into Europe now, including the north of Italy, one is struck by the fact that here one has got sort of affluence of a kind which really only is to be found in little bits of Britain at the moment, and where certainly the whole gamut of policies that have been tried before by the Conservative and Labour Party hadn't got anywhere. Thatcher, at least, has been trying a solution to these things, and if that is rejected, I think what one needs to hear is what really is the workable alternative.
That calls from San Diego. You're on.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated because on the right, the protection of our economy and the private enterprise system, the evidence every day is enough to make you want to vomit. I mean, it's sickening. But also on the left, and the socialists, you look at it for 70 years, there's no emphasis on any entrepreneurial opportunities for those people. Why do they just persist in staying in the same kind of ideas? You go to a socialist to solve any kind of a problem, they never have any new ideas. It's almost like they're bankrupt since 1917, and everything they've ever tried really has failed. They have to come back and use capitalistic ideas. Why can't they create some new kind of an economic system that really does work? Well, I never see any sincere effort in this behalf, and so I keep rejecting it. I know that wealth, you feel a sense of, when you see the ostentatious display of wealth, it's sickening, and I think that's why most socialists turn away from it. But also, there's just no ideas. I can see there's no way that you can find love and happiness in the socialist system. There's just no way that if you're not on the inside of the movement, you can't get in. They have a bureaucracy that just blocks you out at every turn. It's a hopeless situation. I'd like to see, Shaw said that youth is wasted on the young. Christopher, so far, I tend to agree with him.
I agree with him too, especially since I'm nearer 40 than 30 now. I mean, I'm happy to take that as a comment, but insofar as it was a question, I think it was to me. And I'd say this about it. Britain, since 1945, has been a very, very heavily state-run economy, but also a very, very capitalist one. And another point of interest about Thatcherism has been this, that she believes that Britain has been, in a sense, a socialist collectivist society, really since Churchill ceased to be Prime Minister in 1945. Now, the fact that that's a nonsensical opinion and doesn't fit with any known fact or any known theory doesn't quite rob it of its power, because it's certainly true that there was a lot of inefficient public ownership, a great deal of what I would call craft unionism, trade unions simply acting as syndicates for the protection of members, what you might call on the waterfront trade unionism in some cases. And a great presumption of subsidy in the case of any business that ever got into trouble. And most of that under Conservative governments. It was the Conservatives, for example, who nationalised Rolls-Royce, which was very symbolic in the early 1970s. Thus, one has to say that at least in theory, Thatcher does believe that everybody should take their chances and believes in meritocracy rather than in hierarchy and so forth. But I regard that as basically for public consumption. I think you will find, in fact, that the tax breaks that she's given to those who already are well off and to the businesses that are already in place haven't been rewarded by further investment.
Could I come back on that?
Sure.
I'd like to make two comments. First of all, one thing which is, I think, extremely depressing to many people in Britain is the way in which many people are cut off from the opportunity of using their own initiative. It's really pretty grim, the way in which, in a sense, if people haven't been at the right place at the right point of time with the right qualifications,
So,
they don't really have a second chance.
but
And the way in
become-
which within many different enterprises, especially large state-run enterprises, but this kind of ethos has carried over to a considerable extent into private business in Britain. If someone shows initiative, if they're a little bit old, if they haven't come in with the right sort of qualifications, then there's really no hope for them. And certainly one thing which I think has been extremely striking about the activities of...
I'm sorry, I mean, he says if they come into business and they don't have the proper education, there's no hope for them or whatever. You got to remember that Ford, Ford invented the Ford car, right? Drop out for college, never finish college, drop out. You remember, God, what was his name? The guy that supposedly invented the light bulb in America, where he didn't invent it, it was invented in Britain. He perfected the light bulb. He was a big sort of fighter with Tesla. Yeah, drop out for college, never finish college, right? So this cunt, what he's saying about fucking, I mean, oh my God. In fact, the guy that was instrumental in America building a railroad from the east to the west coast, he invented the Pullman carriage, where you could sleep on a train in America. Yeah, drop out for college, never finish college. Yeah, you see the fucking trend here, where people who have got no fucking education, but have got good ideas and are ruthless, absolutely fucking ruthless. One of the biggest mining operators in America back in the 1800s. Yeah, drop out for college, didn't have a degree, never finished college, ended up fucking being one of the biggest mining operations in fucking the world, right? In that era, not now, but in that era, so you get what I'm saying, yeah, all this bullshit about people have to be educated or they don't know what they're doing, it's all fucking bullshit, right? Where did fucking Tesla, the Tesla cars come from? Where did the people that invented fucking the iPad come? You think they were all fucking professors and they're coming? No. Most of the people that, because the people that were at the top, the people who, own the company, they employed people, who were, they came over there, they did college, they finished high school, bang, had some ideas, nicked their ideas, copyrighted it, bang, become a fucking huge company. Got nothing to do with how educated you are and that. Because some stupid people who have never had any education come up with some of the best fucking ideas. They don't know the technology that's needed to make it, but they come up with an idea. What if we could make something that did that? I've seen something like that. I don't know how it works, but couldn't we make that, do this, and then other people with better brains come along and say, yeah, we could do this, we could do it. And then all they've got to do is get a bank that's going to finance them, and bang, you've got a new company, right? Ideas are what people invest in, not people with fucking, degrees. I'm sorry, this fucking asshole's fucking an idiot.
Of the Conservatives under Thatcher has been a wish to try to break with these very deep-seated institutions and patterns in Britain.
Yes,
and it's something which is extremely difficult to do, but where certainly they have grasped this particular nettle in a way in which no one else has done.
Jim, I don't know if you're going to show any of the Labour spokesmen. As
We
go
are
on,
in just a few minutes.
But let me just say, 'cause now might be the time to say it. It's very striking. Neil Kinnock made a video for this campaign. Labour had never tried any of this
That's
stuff.
the Labour leader.
Yeah, Neil Kinnock, the Labour leader, made a video of a kind Labour had never tried before, and this, for some reason, had a tremendous effect. It moved him 14 points up in the opinion polls the morning after it was shown. And the high point of this 10-minute video is him giving a speech in Wales to a working-class audience and saying, "Why am I the first member of my family ever to go to university? Why is my wife the first member of my family, of her family, ever to go to university? We come from 1,000 generations of workers and soldiers and poets and games players and artisans and craftsmen. Was it because we were thick? No, it wasn't because we were thick. Was it because we were lazy? It wasn't because we were lazy. Was it because we were weak? No, it wasn't. And it was because we never had a platform. We never had a party. We never had the money. We never had any of the advantages that necessitate a simple thing like higher education." Now, the fact that in Britain, in 1987, an appeal like that can have such a tremendous effect on public opinion, so many people recognizing themselves in such an appeal, is a tremendous condemnation of the way our society is organized. People know they've been wasted. They saw their parents' lives squandered with no opportunity, no advantage, for class reasons. And that still remains the most salient fact about our country. And
I would say that is fucking true. I mean, I was 40 before I went back to university. Right? I mean, I was 40-year-old before I went back to university. I had never done any higher education, no full-time higher education courses. But through my life, I've saved money and paid myself through night school, night classes. I've took time off of work, well, not took time, but, when I was out of contract, I didn't have work and had money in the bank, I'd say, well, am I going to sit in my arse here and wait for a fucking job? No, what I did is I went and found a college nearby that was doing courses, and I paid to fucking educate myself. A poor motherfucking cunt like me, working class motherfucker, saving my money and paying to go to fucking colleges and learn something. Now, I wasn't getting fucking degrees or anything. I wasn't going through fucking Oxford or fucking Cambridge. I was going to night school and fucking, 2-3-day-a-week courses to learn stuff when the guy who was teaching people in college had days that he could, take on. Because just like all of us today, all us fucking poor people who have to work fucking 2 and 3 jobs a week, some of these fucking professors weren't making good money because they were working in the public sector and it wasn't funded well. But they could be a professor in fucking Oxford and making £180,000 a fucking year. Yeah. But if you worked in a public fucking school, it was up to you to say, I'm going to do courses and you're going to pay, £30 a day to come in and I'm going to give you my fucking knowledge. And I went and done courses. I did some electronic courses, I did computer courses, I did some engineering courses, I did some C and DC, you know what I mean? CAD-CAM, that sort of thing, right? I went and learned, CAD-CAM. I could take that CAD-CAM course and apply it now to a fucking 3D fucking printer. I could fucking be 3D printing, but I can't afford a fucking 3D printer. But I understand what's fucking going on there. I could fucking definitely do it, right? But I don't have the money. I'm still poor, right? 59 fucking year old, saving up money, paying for courses all my fucking life in order to keep myself fucking abreast of fucking innovation and understanding of what's going on in engineering, electronics, the sciences, the fucking, computing. I mean, just out off my own back, Nobody is paying me for it. I did this off my own fucking back. Can you imagine how fucking educated the whole of Britain could have been if Margaret Thatcher had to fucking put the money that she gave to banks and fucking big business and corporations and tax cuts? Can you imagine how educated a fucking populace we could have in Britain? Britain used to be rulers of the waves because the Queen, who ruled the country, decided, I'm going to make more ships than any other country in the world. Margaret Thatcher could have been a Prime Minister that says, I'm going to have the most educated populace in the fucking world. She could have fucking done that. She didn't. She did exactly the same as the fucking Americans done and the Germans done and every country else did. They fucking gave money to the top fucking 1% of the fucking populations, rich people, and thought that that money was going to trickle down. And it never has. 80 fucking years we've been waiting on that money trickling down, and it fucking never has. We need a government that's going to invest in the actual people who are going to be the brains, the engine of our fucking economy. It's the people who are born every fucking day in this fucking world. It's not your billionaires or their fucking offspring. Half of those motherfuckers are so inbred, they couldn't fucking tell you what fucking 2 and 2 is. In fact, most of them think we never landed on the moon. QAnon is a fucking good thing. These are the fucking people we want to get out of our fucking politics. We want to get away from our industry. These cunts own businesses. They own businesses. They think 9/11 was fake. They think school shootings were fake. They think the fucking earth is flat and we never landed on the moon. These motherfuckers can't be left in charge of our country, man. For fuck's sake. They just can't be left in charge, right? These cunts are going to kill the whole fucking, life and the whole earth. They're going to murder us all. With their fucking stupid, anon and fucking God this and God that and fuck you. Fuck me.
Therefore, I think that Thatcher's dealing in illusion, saying that she hopes to abolish the socialist idea.
But the sad thing is that it's the very kind of institution which the Labour Party has then moved towards historically, and for which, as far as I can see, there's been no real indication that if they got in, they'd be wanting to move away from, which has just served to cement people into the kind of traps that they had been in. I mean, granted, everyone, I mean, I say everyone, I mean, it's really rather nice that the Labour Party has at least come around to recognising the problem. What they don't seem to have understood is that the way in which they've been conducting affairs in Britain really, in many ways, constituted a problem. I mean, certainly there are many features of the policies of the present Conservative government which are tough, which do seem pretty ruthless, but it is a radical attempt to get to grips with exactly these problems, whereas the problem on the other side, and in terms of all that the Labour Party is projecting, was that it's as if, yes, there are big problems, and we care about them and we will do something, and where what was actually then going to be done was either not too clearly specified, or where it was, it looks as if it was going to end up putting power back behind exactly the same kind of traditional institutions, particularly in terms of the trade union movement in Britain, which in many ways, and I think from some of the remarks you've been making, pretty much everyone accepted had been a major cause of these problems.
Right. This guy doesn't understand fucking anything, right? The rise of the Labour fucking unions, trade unions in Britain, was as a result of rich people saying, I want you to work 14 hours. You used to work 10 hours a day. I want you to work 14 hours a day, and I want you to take a cut in wages. That's what happened in America. You look at American labour fucking unions and the fights, the amount of times they were shot by the police, controlled by governors and fucking, huge fucking, rich people who owned all the factories. Yeah, they get shot in the street for standing up and saying, we're working 14 hours a day now, to discover the fucking electric light. At least we used to work 10 hours a day when the fucking sun was doing it was too dark to work, you sent us home. Now you've invented electric light and you put electric lights in your factory. Now you expect us to work 14 hours a fucking day for less fucking money. More hours for less fucking money. What the fuck? Who fucking thinks that's fucking fair? Just because they spent money putting electric light bulbs, now the workers go to pay for it, so we're going to have to pay them fucking, 4 tuppence a fucking hour less than what they were getting paid until we pay for the lights. So that they can work another 4 hours. Are you fucking kidding me? But this is the fucking way that cunts like this think. Well, these people are innovative. They innovated that they made it impossible for you to work 14 hours. Well, I think anybody with a job should thank their fucking overlords for giving them that job and paying them a little bit less for more hours. In the end, they're going to end up earning more per day. You know what I mean? What? That's his fucking calculation in his fucking head? What the fuck? No, this is fucking ridiculous, stupid. This is conservative bullshit. The fact is, most of the people that own these factories didn't invent any of the technology that were used in those factories. What would happen is, some poor motherfucker who was really smart, just genetically born really smart, he would go into a factory and see something and say to his boss, I think if we did this it would speed things up, we could make more money an hour. And the boss would hear about it and say, that's fantastic, let me talk to that guy. What other ideas you got? See, he would employ him as an advisor and he'd give him a couple of fucking shillings more a week and he would change the whole factory out. And that guy eventually would get enough money to say, you know what, I don't want to work in this. And he would fuck off and buy a farm somewhere and, and leave the fucking factory run by this fucking overlord motherfucker who just wanted more and more money out of his workers. You know what I mean? Yeah. I get that. People say, well, that's not solidarity. That's terrible. That guy went there and grabbed as much as he could, out of his brains and then fucked up. Yeah, that's often what happens with smart people who come from a poor background. They're not backed up. They're not invested in anything because they get one fucking idea a fucking lifetime. But if you're a fucking rich motherfucker, you see 1,000 of those people go through in your factory and you get 1,000 ideas in a lifetime. The thing is, as a fucking country, you can't allow those ideas to just disappear into some anomalous fucking corporation. You need to have these people going through fucking proper schools. You need to fucking develop their fucking minds, develop their ideas. These are going to be the Einsteins. These are going to be the fucking people, what do you call them? Who is it? The guy that developed all the fucking steel work in fucking in Britain. God damn it, I can't remember his fucking name. But you know what I mean? Yeah. There are certain geniuses that come, and you're going to let them slip through your fingers into some greasy little palm fucking hand of some cunt who runs a company. No, he's going to burn them up over a period of a few years, give him a couple of £1,000 and then he's going to fucking disappear into the wilderness because he can't handle working like that and basically destroying the lives of other people below him. Obviously, some of them come along like Bezos and fucking, the Apple guy and the cunt is doing the X fucking rockets now. Yeah, occasionally some people come along that, they're smart, they get an opportunity and they basically just, what the fuck? It's like that fucking, I invented a new form of transport. Trains in tunnels. No, cars in tunnels. Really? We've got cars going through tunnels. We've got trains going through tunnels. Oh, but I'm going to make the tunnels, vacuums. And that'll make it... No, it doesn't make it faster. But still never going to perfect that fucking technology. You know why? Because a single fucking bullet hole in any of those fucking pipes will fucking explode the fucking thing. And what kind of world do we live in where nobody's going to shoot at that shite? Are you fucking kidding me? We're never going to build tubes across the fucking country. full of vacuums with fucking things flying through at 1,000 fucking kilometres an hour. We are never going to build that shit. It's too fucking dangerous. It's a stupid fucking idea. Rockets flying from fucking America to fucking Australia in 45 minutes? Never going to fucking happen. 1,000 people on board. Really? What happens if something goes wrong? They all die. Why? Because we didn't put any safety features in. Why do you think we got a man to the moon and back? Because everything was fucking 3 times redundant. If one thing failed, there was another one. If that failed, there was another one. What have they got in these rockets are going to be sending around the fucking moon? No, the moon, the Earth. You know what I mean? Nothing. If something goes wrong, boom, you're all dead. 1,000 fucking people. Right, nobody's going to pay to fucking do that. You know what I mean? In fact, I'm thinking if I'm travelling around the world, I'd be happy to go on a fucking boat. I would rather we just perfected the idea of, you know what I mean, cruise ships. Who the fuck wants to fly 18 hours on a fucking airplane to Australia when I can take fucking 2 weeks to get there on a cruise where I meet people, I gamble in the casino, and we stop off occasionally for 2 or 3 fucking days to visit different places like India and something I've never seen before. I would rather cruise to fucking Australia than fly there in 45 minutes. Are you fucking kidding me? If I get the money to go to Australia, I want to take my fucking time. I want to fucking visit some places and see some things I'm never going to see. You know what I mean? Instead of flying over it. This is the whole fucking thing in America about aeroplanes, isn't it? You've got the flyover zone where they fly from the east coast to the west coast and nobody lands in the middle. What? And now this cunt wants to do the same thing with the world? Really? I mean, people are not into that shit. It's not a fucking social thing. We are social animals. We want to stop off and interact and talk. We don't want to just want... Well, businessmen like this cunt want to do it because they don't like people. Fucking Bezos and fucking, you know, all these other cunts you've heard about, you know what I mean? They don't like people. They want to control how many people they interact with. With me, when I go somewhere, I want to meet as many people as possible. I want to expand my fucking understanding of people and where I am in the world. Not these people, they want to avoid it. Fuck. This is why we can't have people like this in charge of the fucking world.
Let's go up if we can to New England, Newton, Massachusetts. You're on.
Hi, thank you very much. I'd like to ask Chris Hitchens 2 questions. And by the way, he's not a snit. He writes very insightful comments in his Nation column. My 2 questions are, do the British election results reflect the continuation of an irreparable North-South division in the country? And will the fact that Mrs. Thatcher failed to gain a majority, only a plurality, increase the demands from the Alliance and the Labour Party for electoral reform away from single-member districts to proportional representation?
Well, I can only say, well, yes, because it did divide the country. And yes, for the second question as well, Scotland has recently tried twice to fucking become independent from Britain. Doesn't that fucking tell you a lot about the North fucking South divide? I mean, come on.
Thank you.
North-South divides certainly become the great emerging theme of British demography, and obviously a glance at the map makes it very dramatic. An old friend of mine won a seat last night for the first time, a Labour seat in Sunderland, a declining shipbuilding town on the northeast coast. Conservative candidate in Sunderland didn't hold his deposit, which means he got by basically 1,000 votes in the whole town. And my friend Chris Mullin, former editor of Tribune, and the man to watch, by the way, increased the Labour majority in Sunderland by something like 18%. Now, those votes might as well not have been cast. This is just a working-class town that wouldn't vote Tory to save its life, but where those votes simply go to elect one more MP. If there was proportional representation, you'd get a quite different spread of votes and seats across the country. And I do think that given now that Scotland and Wales hardly elect anyone for the governing party, which has more or less supreme power in the chamber, and that the third party has not got seats in proportion to its vote at all, does strengthen the case for proportional representation of national power. Unfortunately, there's something in the British temper, which I don't totally disagree with, that's against the idea of fudging the choice, that quite wants to have a clear winner and a clear outcome and a clear decision-making choice, and that will never take the Italian option of a bunch of small parties who, after the election, then get together and fix it in smoke-filled rooms, no more democratic. So though it's fair to say that on the extreme left, Arthur Scargill of the Miners' Union is for proportional representation, and on the centre-right, people like Roy Jenkins are for it, that it still just doesn't kindle a fire in the national psyche, mixing the metaphor. See what I mean?
Jeremy?
If I can come in on this, first of all, the North-South divide. It is there and it is real. It is, though, a little bit patchy. Certainly, a friend of mine, Michael Fallon, was returned with a slightly diminished majority, but a very small majority in a northern town of Darlington, and there have been other such cases. What is, I think, noticeable...
Yeah, if you know Darlington, you know it's a fucking rural area, it's not a city. And that's why it's farmers and people who have been promised investment into their farms, investment by the government to keep them going, keep them ticking over. But then, this is 1987, in the last 30, 40 years, all these small farmers, they're all been wiped out and bought up by fucking corporations. And now they don't own the farm, they're off the farms have all been conglomerated into one big fucking farm, just what happened in America. And these people are no longer wanting to vote for the fucking the Conservative. But it's no point in voting now because their farm's fucking gone. Their livelihood has been taken off them over the last 20, 30 years. And now it's just fucking a big gigantic corporation with fucking stocks and shares on the stock market. You know what I mean? It's most of the fields that we fallow because, well, while we were in Europe, they were getting paid not to plant any fucking shit on their fields. And then people voted to leave Europe, and now they're not getting the European money. What's going to happen to these corporations? They're going to sell that farmland off. Farmland, by the way, Greenbelt farmland. They're going to fight the government in order to change the regulations for building so that they can build on green land and build houses. Houses that nobody can afford because nobody's got a fucking job. It's fucking ridiculous, man. Fuck.
And when talking to Fallon, I found this out about his own scouting round in the northeast, is the extent to which people there have indeed been people who have been preserved in their jobs in typically either the government sector or in heavy manufacturing industry, which has been helped out by government. And one consequence of this has been that even in areas of extremely high unemployment, when there's been the opportunity through various government schemes to encourage people to start up businesses in a small way, it's had comparatively negligible take-up there. As to say, it seems to me that the problem that is in part being reflected in the North-South divide is an entire culture which has been created in some areas of the north of England, such that outside of certain traditional, but I think inevitably declining forms of industry, inevitably declining because these are ones which newly industrializing countries are going to be coming into competition with. People's initiative...
Yeah, these foreign countries who are now becoming industrialised, which we sold the technology to, we went there and showed them how to set up factories to compete with Britain and America because their labour force was working for like a tenth of the fucking cost. That's what it was about. It wasn't about fucking keeping people employed in Britain. We kept them employed for a couple of years while the people that owned the factories they worked in built a factory in fucking South America or fucking Asia and employed people there. And once they got up and running and then they stuck it on ships and brought it to Britain, cheaper than we could make it here, they shut their factories down. And that was the whole plan. These companies have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 year plans. Governments used to have 20, 30, 40 year plans. Now a government has a plan for the next election. The next election cycle, 4 fucking years, 5 years, that's it. They don't have a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-year plan. The companies that are fucking, what do you call them? What do you call that when they come in and fucking... you've got them in America, or what, I can't remember what you call them. You know, they come in and, you know, they say to some politician, we'll support you with £30,000 in your next election if you'll fucking, you know, just help us with the regulation and change this, you know what I mean, vote for that. But don't know if it's ever going to happen. But, you know, if it does come out, you'll vote for it, we'll give you 30,000 towards the next one. That's what's they're buying up their politicians with fucking meagre air. These people are making billions a year and they're paying our politicians off with £30,000 for the next fucking election. God damn it.
It has, in a sense, been sacked. And while certainly it's a big job to consider, and it's difficult to consider quite what government policies can do to assist this, I'm not at all sure that a policy, say, of responding to distress in the north of England, by essentially more of the same, more of what has really created the problem, is going to help. As to proportional representation, I think that Chris is right.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of proportional representation myself. I understand it, but I'm not a big fan of it. I'm still a fan of first past the post, but in a way that negates my idea that people should have the right to voice their opinions and support different angles, different political ideas. So I'm kind of, even now, I mean, I'm 59, I've watched the rise of proportional representation. It helped my government, the Scottish Government, become independent. In a way, you know, not totally independent, but no, independent-ish from the Westminster government. But it's still, I still don't see that it's been good for Britain to go down the road of multiple choice in elections, because that's what it is. It's a multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. Rather than just A or B, you know, so yeah, it's diluted votes in some areas, while it's increasing votes in some areas because you get first, second, third, A, B, C, D. So it's kind of weird the way that it works in Britain, but yeah, I'm still conflicted with, you know, how we work the sort of multiple choice idea, you know what I mean, in Britain, in politics. I can't say it's been completely bad, but I can't say it's completely worked well either for the British people, so yeah.
On this, with one possible exception, which is that proportional representation is typically something that any third party in Britain will say is really a marvellous idea, but it works to the advantage of the two large, the first past the post system in Britain works to the advantage of the two large parties in Britain, so that they would be highly unlikely to agree to make any move, even if they're on the losing side, because they do pretty badly out of it. Another element to it is that insofar as both within the Conservative Party and within the Labour Party, you have people who take the view that some quite radical action is needed to address Britain's problems, then they also are going to shy away from a system which would be likely to ensure that no action that departed in any dramatic way from what's already been.
But there again, as I said, any party that's got like a 20 or 30 year plan for taking power is going to win out over any party that's only thinking of the next 4 years. And that's why I say the downfall of political parties in Britain is when we ended up with people who came from business and they had this idea of quarterly share, you know, stocks and stuff like that, price. They went from having 20, 30, 40 year plans to how can we win the next election in you know, 4 years. And that's what killed politics in Britain. When we started to see lots of business people become politicians. And it's been the downfall of America as well. How many people in America, you know, politicians in America, are not ex-businessmen or are not going through that fucking revolving door of working for the bank working for capitalists, working for the government. That is the downfall. Everybody's looking at, the next 3 months, the next 6 month numbers, the end of the year numbers. You know what I mean? We've got an election in a year's time. It's like they're become myopic rather than trying to expand their view and try to find out how do we project things over 10, 20 years. That's the way a government needs to work. If a government is not working at that, look at the fucking Chinese government. They've got like 100 fucking year plans, for fuck's sake. And look how well they're doing against the fucking world. Doesn't matter how fucked up the country is, they're still holding to that fucking 100-year fucking plan. And our politicians can't get a plan further than fucking next month. The next 24-hour fucking news cycle. What the fuck?
We have a clip from the Labour Party, one of the Labour Party leaders, last night, and we'd like to see that now.
You and Mr. Kinnock are dubbed the dream ticket. Doesn't the dream look as if it's turning into a bad dream?
Don't lose the cliche altogether. The nightmare is the phrase you stumbling for. It depends what the result is. I think Mr. Kinnock and me, principally Mr. Kinnock, ran our first-class campaign. We've re-established the Labour Party, whatever happens tonight, as a great national party. People who were talking, 6 years about the death of the Labour Party and dancing on our grave aren't talking about that anymore. The alliance has passed into political oblivion. Whatever happens tonight, the Labour Party is there and is the alternative government of this country.
You agree with that?
No, I don't.
I don't at the time. I
remember
remember Roy Hartley. I
Reminds me
fucking
of all
didn't like
the
Roy
reasons I wanted
Hartley.
to leave England 7 years ago. He has to say that, of course.
Of course.
The fact is, look, the Labour Party has lost 3 successive elections without a shadow of doubt as to the result.
And I've got to say, the only reason Labour won the next election when Thatcher was put out was because the people that moved into the Labour Party were Conservatives who couldn't get elected as Conservatives. And this is what's happening in America. A lot of the people who are being elected as Democrats in America are Conservatives who knew they couldn't, go up against the person who's already, the Senate or the House Rep, as a Conservative, but they've seen the changing flow of water, flow of political ideology, and they thought, I can register as a Democrat and run against them as a Democrat and win. But they were actually Conservatives running as Democrats, and this is what we got in our country as well. We see, normally it comes from America and comes to Britain, but Britain exported this to America. Tony Blair, a Conservative, he was a Conservative fucking minister. He was a Conservative MP. Became a Labour Democrat all his fucking life. Became a Conservative. Became a fucking populist. And became president. He wasn't a Conservative. He was a fucking Democrat all his fucking life. So we exported that to use, and I'm sorry about that. But I've got to say, I'm not sorry, because you exported your financial fucking system to us and fucked your country up through that as well. So we've got a little bit of tit for tat. You did that to us and we did that to you, you know what I mean?
3 crushing defeats on the trot from a woman who was derided when she first became leader of the party as a right-wing extremist and as a throwback to what she herself has since called Victorian values. Rightly is she so derided. But she has found something in the British electorate that Labour, try as it may, and it fought as near to a non-political campaign as it could, can't replicate. Now that's a serious defeat, and for Hattersley to pretend otherwise is completely ridiculous.
I thought part of what he mentioned, though, was he re-established the Labour Party at the expense of the Alliance, the third party.
However, but he in a sense gives himself the lie by talking about 3 parties. The fact is that by conceding that there is now a 3-party system, he's admitting that Labour can't even mobilise all the anti-Tory vote, which it used to be able to do effortlessly.
Yeah.
And if there are three parties in Britain, Labour can never be a majority government. And so I think Mr. Hattersley is whistling.
Jeremy, you'd like to add anything?
Yes, if I could. I think that one feature of the Labour Party's campaign was that they picked up quite a lot of votes that most of us were expecting would go to the Alliance. It was especially in, for example, these commercials with Kinnock and his wife dancing over the cliff tops in a way not unlike your president's wife in previous such films that attracted the attention.
This is what I'm saying. If the British people and American people are so fucking caught up with videos of supposed leaders doing stupid shit, like, you know, dancing on the beach, walking along the beach and escaping the waves as they come in and getting their feet wet and shit like that. I mean, if that's the sort of things that makes people feel, oh, they're just like me and you, John, when we used to walk on the beach. Remember, we used to walk out and then the waves come in and we all get our feet wet. Oh, that if that's the level of, oh, I'm going to vote for him because of that, what the fuck does it say about fucking policy? What does it say about government policy when people can't even understand the policy? Because they put it in all this fucking really complicated fucking wordage that normal people can't understand what the fuck they're doing, but they're interested in some fucking picture of them walking along a cliff or walking along a beach, and that makes them vote for them. Videos. Fucking YouTube fucking videos. Like, there's millions of people making hundreds of thousands of pounds a month on YouTube videos being basically fucking fake as fuck. Oh, God. Yeah, that's where politics is now. If you can get someone to film you and fucking edit it right, you're going to get elected, and it doesn't matter what your policy is. People don't care. They don't care what your policy is. You know, you're going to lock children up in cages, who gives a fuck? You're going to shoot fucking Mexicans in the border, who gives a fuck? You're going to fucking, you know, tell Jews or fucking, what do you call them, Muslims to wear a fucking patch to identify them in the street. Yeah, let's just go for that. Let's just become fucking Nazi Germany. What the fuck? Doesn't matter, so long as I see a nice picture of you fucking walking on the beach, I'm happy. You're fuck.
Attention of an interest of these people in a way that's quite symptomatic, and it relates to a point that happened.
Back in a minute, just got to put
I have to
my
say,
dish
the
in the
Labour
sink.
Party has faced a difficulty over the period gradually going on since 1945. What is that? Well, it is really that in Britain, political attitudes and voting behaviour are dictated in many ways by people's socioeconomic status, the kind of jobs in which they're employed, and so on. And the Labour Party is in this respect unlucky that there has been an undermining of its own natural base, of those people who really without thought would vote for the Labour Party because they identify.
Well, that fucking didn't work out well.
Now, since
It's too late.
1945,
Somebody
there's
went
been
and
a
washed the
gradual
dishes
process
up.
of destabilisation of such knee-jerk electorals.
And I can guarantee that I'm going to have to wash them all again, because I guarantee it's my dad. He went in there and they just rubbed things and put it in a fucking tray, drip tray. And I guarantee half the fucking plates have got food stuck to it. I'm going to have to wash all the fucking dishes again. So I just left my bowl there. I'm going to have to wash it. I don't want to do it. I've not got time. I just want to just put my bowl into fucking hot water with soap and fucking leave it to soak, and then it makes it dead easy later on. Wash out and, rinse it with boiling water at the tap. Touch it with your fingers and it's squeaky clean, there's nothing on it. Put it, you know what I mean? My dad, he just went, yeah, and it's like, there's a whole bunch of fucking half-washed fucking plates. I don't know, I think he's got Alzheimer's. I know my ma's got memory problems. I think he's got Alzheimer's. I keep telling him, don't wash your dishes, I'll do it. And then he fucking does it, and then I've got to wash them again,
Thought And this has been something which gradually the Liberal Party has picked up, which when the Social Democrats joined them, they just simply continued. I mean, there was no sort of big boost, really. It was simply a continuation of a trend that was there. But these people are drawn more typically from right across the socioeconomic spectrum. And they, I guess, also will be people who might be rather more responsive to the kind of pitch that the Labour Party made. Thus, it did, certainly the Labour Party didn't do particularly well, but it did rather better than one might have expected. But I wouldn't have even been particularly sanguine about getting those votes and that sort of support if I were a member of the Labour Party. Why? Because it was support of a rather different kind from that which I depended on previously.
See, this is what I don't understand about people, right? I know in America you've got the Democrats and the Republicans, right? Now, the Republicans seem to be all out for business. Business people, business this, business that. Now, that's the same as our Conservative Party. Now, you do get people who come from poor backgrounds who you know, they go and they start a small business and then, you know, they take advantage of the tax codes and all that, and they meet the local Conservative Party member and they donate to his campaign, and they go and they meet, and then, you know, he's like, oh, I'm going to be moving and I'm going to be sitting in another seat and this seat's open, and they get in, and, you know, so, but it's all people from business, and they're always going on about tax cuts, you know, corporation tax cuts, you know, council tax cuts, we've got to stop taxing businesses so much, blah, blah, blah. Right? So business, they all get all the fucking breaks, right? That's the Conservative Party here in Britain, right? Labour Party, full of people who worked in the coal mines, people who worked in the buses, people who worked in, you know, construction and demolition, didn't own a company, but they understand the ordinary working man. They go in and out of people's homes, they see the poverty, they see the, you know, a young mum, three bairns. Her husband just died in a fucking tragic fucking accident in some warehouse somewhere where you get run over by a fucking forklift truck or something, and she's struggling to feed her bairns, and the government's not giving her any money. The company isn't responsible because the health and safety says, well, he wasn't wearing a yellow fucking jacket, all that shit, right? So this is the sort of people who are in the Labour Party, right? Trying to help ordinary, normal working people who are being basically run roughshod over. Can't sue the company because he wasn't wearing his yellow jacket, which they were supposed to provide him. They said they provided him, but, you know, he didn't have it in his locker. So where was it? Where was the yellow jacket he was supposed to have on? Oh, well, we definitely gave him one. They've not got any registration of him signing for it or then giving it to him. They say, oh no, we definitely gave it to him. I don't know what he did. Who knows? He could have took it home and left it at home, you know, but all that shit. So, because there's no proof that he wasn't wearing a jacket, he wasn't giving it, blah, 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 right, so the company, you can't sue them. So now she's living with three bairns, can't fucking feed them, and being harassed by the social services and all that shit about, you know, have you got enough money to feed your kid? We're going to take them off you, all that shit, right? This is the people that, you know, come, that's the people that get into the Labour Party, right? Like your Democrats. It's like AOC, a barmaid, you know what I mean? Gets into it, understands the problems of people in their normal lives. Whereas your GOP are like fucking business owners who tout that I'm wearing a fucking gun. Oh, you little shit, no, you survived a shooting at your school. Why are you using kids to fucking try and take my sentiment rights away, blah, blah, blah. You know, run down the fucking street chasing some poor kid, you know what I mean? Saying that, you know, that the 9/11 was a fucking false flag, the school shootings were a false flag, you know what I mean? You know, Nancy Pelosi deserves to get killed. She's fucking a treasonous bitch, you know. Yeah, she's in your fucking parliament, really? I mean, this is what I'm saying. There's a difference between ideology and making life better for the people that live in your country. Ideologists don't give a fuck about the people in their country. Oh, they'll tout all the time. Well, I'm speaking for the people. The biggest majority of people say that I'm right when they're speaking for a tiny fucking minority. A loud minority, yes, but they're speaking for a loud fucking minority. They're not speaking for the majority of the people. The majority of people don't want those motherfuckers in control whatsoever. But as soon as these people get any power, they're in there, they're sitting in the House of Representatives, they're screaming and shouting about fighting for the American people. What they're talking about is they're fighting for them and fucking their family and the fucking rich motherfuckers who they know that if they fucking shout and scream long enough, begging long enough, they're going to give them money to get re-elected. They don't give a fuck about you. And that's what we get in fucking Britain. And this cunt, this baldy ass fucking cunt doesn't know anything about fucking British fucking politics or the British people. Probably doesn't know anything about American people either, doesn't care. He's speaking his mind about, well, this is the way it looks to me, you know what I mean? Well, government does this and government does that. Yeah, your government, the Conservative side of government.
Unless the Labour Party itself were willing really to turn its back on its roots and on its firmly held ideological beliefs and make a pitch for the kind of territory that the Liberals and the Social Democrats have got in Britain, I think it would be very difficult for them to retain the support of those people.
Let's go to Portland, Oregon. You're on.
Hi. By the way, Mr. Hitchens, I think you're wrong about the bases in England. If it's anything like our arrangement with Germany, they're carried on your list as your bases, but occupied by Allied forces. I don't know. You'd have to check the status of forces agreement, but I think you'll find that's the case. What really stuns Americans is when you tell them, well, you know, Americans are not responsible for security of their bases overseas. And this inevitably draws a very long blank stare. And you have to point out that the host government is responsible for security. So at Lake and Heath or Cheddar and Ham on Rye or wherever it is they happen to be, that's where you're going to see nothing but bobbies out there with the demonstrators.
No, not bobbies. We do have fucking armed forces over here. You do know that we do have fucking armed forces in Britain who are responsible for the security outside of the base, not inside the base. Inside the base, American base, you're responsible for the security inside the base, but outside on the road, we're responsible. We have fucking active fucking, armed fucking units sitting in cars, a small distance away, ready to respond. And they're there 24/7. Just in case something fucking happens around your fucking base. And they turn up whenever a bunch of fucking women in fucking shell suits turn up with signs and start shouting fucking, oh, get rid of the atom bombs. There's 4 fucking cop cars there. At least one of them is going to be armed. So, yeah, don't fucking tell me Britain's responsible and, how can we look after fucking things? We fucking on top of fucking shit. God damn it, man. If your base wasn't there, we wouldn't fucking have to be doing that,
Your government's obliged to provide that security. But on to my question. About NATO, I didn't find Mr. Kinnock's proposal all that strange. I thought it was perhaps a little premature, because I do tend to think of NATO as being something that is subject to centrifugal forces. That is, over time, unless there's a countervailing force, there will be a tendency for it to kind of fall apart.
Right. NATO, this is 2001. NATO is still around. NATO is the force that is between Russia and Europe, not America. You used to be part of NATO, so yeah, you used to help us with it, but then fucking Trump pulled us out. Or he was trying to pull you out. And now, Biden's saying, we're going to stop that, we're going to stick with NATO. Look, NATO has kept peace in fucking Europe for, 45, 55, 76 fucking years. Right? I don't know, I think NATO only came around in 48. So, not 76, probably 68. 68 years NATO's been keeping fucking Europe in peace. with a bolster against the fucking invading hordes of the Russian fucking Empire. Although Russia is now not Soviet Russia anywhere. But, you know, it's not the Soviet Union, but it's Russia now, you know. But yeah, we've been keeping that's NATO has been the bolster. And America used to support us in that until fucking Trump. Right, so this is like 87, right? So I don't know what Hutchins is going to say about this, but I mean, NATO it's not Britain, it's not Germany, it's not Europe. NATO is a conglomerate, a cartel, if you will, of nations who see themselves as under threat from Russia and would like to have ties with other countries to say, well, if I get attacked, we'll help you, and if you get attacked, I'll help you. And America, because you remember in the Cold War, the main aim, the main enemy of Russia, Soviet Union rather, was America. And America needed NATO as a bolster, as a fucking first defence against them. I mean, realising how quickly one small country like Germany took over almost the whole of fucking Europe, could you imagine if America and Russia were at odds with each other and Russia took over the whole of Europe? Now they've got a huge land base to fucking build, utilise all the industry there and build a fucking force to try and attack America. I mean, America would be fucking shocked. Yes, if Russia took over Europe. But rather than fucking wait for that to happen and then worry about it, you were part of NATO in order to stop that from fucking happening. Why would fucking Trump say he was pulling out of it and that NATO wasn't pulling its fucking weight? I fucking don't know, right? Hello? Hello? What's going on?
Where do you see it going if we assume that the Gorbachev initiatives really are leading to ultimately a mutual and balanced force reduction and the more overt kinds of threats that we think of when we think of the need for NATO gradually disappear?
To your first point, I didn't mean to imply that the American bases in Britain are like, say, the American base in Cuba, that they're part of United States territory and that the government there has no control over them. And as far as I know, the Guantanamo base in Cuba is the only example of that. And clearly they remain British soil, but they are not under British control any more than the cruise and Pershing missiles are. And there was never a treaty, as there is with other countries in which American bases are cited.
Right, Germany.
Nor was there ever a debate in Parliament about it. And it is this that fuels much of the protest. So, if I wasn't sufficiently clear about that before, I hope I am now. As for NATO, I think you're not quite persuasive in contrasting it with the EEC. There is, in fact, a two-tier
economic community, being a peaceful economic association, there is a tendency for...
NATO isn't an economic association. NATO is a military association. We are all in agreement that all as countries are part of NATO, and if Russia attacks any one of those countries, all the other NATO countries will come up and say, you're not just attacking that country, you're attacking us, you've declared war on the world, basically. That's what NATO is. It's a fucking deterrent from Russia attacking any of the NATO countries.
Forces to bring the various countries closer and closer together, which of course causes some elements of various countries to feel...
No! It's got nothing to do with any of the countries coming closer together. It's simply an agreement that if any of the NATO countries get attacked by Russia, or any other outside China or whatever, all the NATO countries will come to the aid of the country being attacked. That's all it is. It's an alliance of nations stating to other nations, if you attack me, you're not just attacking me, you're attacking all these other nations. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with economics or any fucking thing. It's simply a military fucking pact to defend each other if anybody is attacked.
Very squeezed, and there's a lot of political problems, I guess, there. I was just wondering, in terms of NATO, where do you see it going if we assume that the Gorbachev initiatives really are leading to...
The Gorbachev initiative doesn't matter a fuck. All Gorbachev is saying is we're going to reduce nuclear weapons. It's got nothing to do with tanks or soldiers invading a fucking country. And that's what NATO is against. NATO is against an invasion of any country. And by the way, right, luckily, the Crimea, Crimea, what do you call it? Anyway, the countries that fucking Russia invaded and took parts of recently during Trump's fucking reign, right? Well, before his reign, Obama's reign, and into Trump's reign, none of these were NATO countries. Which is why NATO didn't instigate the fucking, the NATO pact, I can't remember, Rule 44, I think it was. Like, for instance, when America went to war with fucking Iraq, NATO countries decided they're going to support America in that war. NATO decided, we're going to go and we're going to fight Iraq. It was all NATO. Yugoslavia, NATO went in there. It wasn't fucking the British Army or the German, it was NATO. It was a multitude, the Swedes, the fucking, the fucking Belgians, the Germans, the French. Everybody went and supported America in those wars. We supported your battles, your fights with these countries through NATO. And then fucking Trump pulls out of it. What the fuck was that about?
Ultimately, a mutual and balanced force reduction and the more overt kinds of threats that we think of when we think of the need for NATO gradually disappear.
To your first point, I didn't mean to imply that the American bases in Britain are like, say, the American base in Cuba, that they're part of United States territory and that the government there has no control over them. As far as I know, the Guantanamo base in Cuba is the only example of that. And clearly they remain British soil, but they are not under British control any more than the cruise and Pershing missiles are. And there was never a treaty, as there is with other countries in which American bases are cited.
They just repeat the same thing.
Have always had a rather more fractious relationship with the NATO alliance, partly because they really are nothing to do with the North Atlantic. Symmetrical with a two-tier NATO. Southern European countries such as Greece, Turkey, which isn't yet quite in the EEC, and Italy, have always had a rather more fractious relationship with the NATO alliance, partly because they really are nothing to do with the North Atlantic.
They're not
the North Atlantic powers have. I think you're right, though, that there is a fissile tendency in the alliance. What I think it is one that has a more Western European consciousness, and that hopes to create, in the end, a Europe that can defend itself and that doesn't need to be at the mercy of either superpower. Now, in his admittedly vague and sometimes rather romantic way, that's what Mr. Kennett is proposing. Mrs. Thatcher here is caught between two stools. She's not much of a European and never has been, and particularly has never been able to have a good alliance with France. But she's neither happy about the apparently automatic subordination of the United Kingdom to the United States in foreign and defense policy. And to revert to a question we were asked earlier, I think that in a year or so, when she becomes, when your president leaves office, the senior European statesman, one might find, paradoxically, that it would be the Tories that would chart a more independent and European course for the country. And that'll be very interesting if it does occur.
Seems to me to be, and if I can just speak personally on this matter, to be something extremely attractive about the idea of Western Europe becoming gradually responsible for its own defense. This, I think, would have, in the longer term, defusing consequences on the international scene, because measures which the United States may be taking in the defense of the West as a whole can, I think, very often look rather threatening. Whereas if Western Europe were involved essentially with defensive measures just for itself, then it would be rather more difficult for anyone else to picture these things as being aggressive. The difficulty about that is the cost of it. I mean, that's to say that
Well, all fucking war is costly, you fucking idiot. Which is why America joined the NATO alliance. They seen, after the Second World War, when Russia, took over half of Germany, and they had fucking borders, British borders and German borders and Russian borders and American borders with the fucking East. That, and the wall went up. That's when America thought, oh God, maybe Russia is a threat to us, and you had the Cold fucking War. And they seen it as fucking good for them to have forward bases, forward intelligence, an alliance with these countries who are on the border with Russia to help them. We put in all kinds of listening fucking posts for rockets going off and satellites up to watch for it and stuff like that. America found it increasingly more important to put the money in to help us countries build that infrastructure for their defence. They couldn't give a fuck if Russia bombed Europe, but they knew that if Russia bombed Europe, it would only be a matter of time until Russia was aiming at America. So we were your front defence, and we were expendable. And we are still the fucking same. There has been no change in the difference between Russia and America at the moment. It hasn't changed. The Cold War's over, you say, but it's just a different kind of war. It's an electronic war, it's a war of propaganda, but you still need us as the front line, because we're going to be the first people the Russians roll over if they roll over MD. This is why I don't understand what the fuck is going on with America. You're either part of this, knowing that we are your front line, or you decide, we don't care. And, if the Russians take Europe, we'll still manage. That's allegiance in the tract of World War and the world going up in fucking flames. You need to help us to fucking defend against Russians' incursions. Otherwise, Putin, crazy people get in charge of that country and say, you know what, we're going to push a wee bit more. We're going to take this bit of country, we're going to take that bit. And if America and NATO don't fucking respond, they will keep pushing until, like Germany, they take the whole of fucking Europe. And then America is going to be like us and them. And look at the state of America. You're at fucking war with yourselves at the moment. How are you going to fight a war with Russia when half the fucking country thinks Russia was good because Trump said they were good? What kind of fucking state is the world in? God damn it. Fucking stupid motherfuckers, man.
The problems facing Europe outside of an American umbrella is who is going to pay for all of this stuff. One of the problems I think facing Kinnock is the following. Suppose that he had been returned on the declared policy. The first thing one must ask is what would actually have happened? Would it really have been the case that America would have been asked to withdraw its bases?
No, that would never have happened. People would have fought for it, but we wouldn't have been able to force America to withdraw its bases. What probably could have happened is Britain might have given up its nuclear arms. But I would have seen, back then, a case where, the nuclear base that we've got down the Clyde, I think probably Britain would have allowed America to take over that and use it as our American submarine base. That's what I would have seen. I mean, I was not a big sort of ban the bomb, person. I've always seen nuclear weapons as a last resort, but it's a resort of you bomb us, we bomb you. You might bomb us more than we bomb you, but we're still going to kill a lot of you. You know, and by the way, I mean, if we were to set off, 100 nuclear warheads, and Russia set off 1,000 nuclear warheads, and America set off 30,000 nuclear warheads, the Earth would be a fucking cinder ash. There would be nowhere left for anybody to live. Nobody would win. That's what I'm saying. It's a last resort. And so long as we don't get some crazy fucking person that's going to push the button, everybody having some is better than only one or two people having them, as far as I'm fucking concerned. Because you never know when some asshole is going to turn and say, oh, we've got more than them, if we just fire first we can win. Nobody wins a nuclear war. We understand that now. Yes, it's expensive. And it becomes more expensive when you get to the end date for nuclear war and you go to replace them or update them, or I understand that. But America needs to know that just what you didn't want fucking nuclear warheads on Cuba, Russia doesn't want nuclear warheads, here in Europe. So that's your trump card, for fuck's sake. To have bases in fucking Britain. To have people like Britain who have got nuclear wars that you can say there's been a nuclear launch and we want you to fire yours. You know what I mean? It's like, god damn it, that's what NATO's about, man.
Would this have actually taken place? I'm a bit sceptical about that. But then suppose that it were. Kinnock and any other Western European government involved in this situation of really having to stand on its own feet would be faced with doing what? Well, either keeping its own nuclear forces as a going concern, and this is something that Britain has done, the Tories are identified with it, but it's frighteningly expensive. Or what? Conventional forces? If one looks at conventional forces in Britain, the cost of getting these up to a realistic level as compared to the USSR is quite phenomenal, and also would lead to enormous difficulties.
Which is why we're not just talking about Britain. NATO. It's 14 countries across Europe. 14 countries with a small force each. And if any one of them gets attacked, they all send their forces there to fucking defend that country. It's like if somebody attacked fucking Norway, the whole of Europe would fucking go and defend Norway. Russia couldn't afford that. Russia couldn't. Even if Russia was to say, like, we're going to invade the whole of fucking Europe across the front. If every country in Europe sent the small amount of armed forces go, and America came in after we'd held them and stopped them, if you eventually gave you time to fucking organise yourselves and come across as part of NATO, Russia would be fucked. This is what it's not about any one individual country, Britain or fucking Germany, tiny wee force. It's everything. It's all of Europe, all of NATO. All saying if any one of us gets attacked, you attack all of us. Fuck me. What is wrong with this guy's fucking head?
Why? Because Britain doesn't have any form of conscription. But what is one going to do? Pay for comparable numbers of people who are going to be sitting in trenches watching their Russian counterparts. The realities of this, I think, start to get really a bit problematic. So while it seems to me that there's an enormous amount that's very unlovely about the current situation.
We're talking about NATO, we're not talking about Britain, we're talking about NATO. 14 countries across Europe. 14 armies. Who spend fucking millions of fucking pounds every fucking year training with each other to organise and coordinate with each other in case they're attacked. It's not one fucking... What the fuck is this guy talking about?
As far as the Western Europeans are concerned, they get quite a nice free ride at the expense of the United States.
No, they fucking don't. There's a couple of countries that pay a bit less than what they want them to pay, like 3% or 1.8% of their GDP. Britain spends like 3.7% of their GDP on armed forces. Some other countries pay a wee bit less, but on the aggregate, across the whole of NATO, the whole of Europe, we spend enough to at least fucking stop an invasion and give America time to come to our aid, because you're a NATO fucking country, and you understand the fucking premise that if Europe falls, we are next. Fuck me, what is wrong with this cunt?
I'm surprised in a way that the US is actually willing to pick up the tab for this one, and
it doesn't pick up the tab. This is a fucking Trump fucking thing. It doesn't pick up the tab. You spends hundreds of fucking billions of fucking euros and pounds every fucking year keeping this army up to a certain fucking state. And it fluctuates from decade to decade like any fucking military does. What the fuck is this guy talking about?
I would expect, with the passing of time, for the US to itself take more of an isolationist move, and for the responsibility of looking after itself to be placed a bit more firmly on Western Europe. But it then would require the Western European governments actually to bite the bullet and consider what realistically they would do in terms of meeting the enormous cost of defense that this would impose on them.
Let's go down to the Gulf Coast. Pensacola, Florida. You're on the air.
Yes, let me get something straight, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay.
The Labour Party, we read a lot about the communists in Great Britain.
There's no communists in Great Britain. What the fuck?
The Labour Party and the Communist Party, is that the...
There's no communist party in power in fucking Britain. The Labour Party are not a communist party. There is a communist party in Britain, but I mean, they're like sitting around in small rooms, 12 people talking about how they're going to take over fucking Britain. 12 fucking people, that's your communist fucking party. What the fuck?
The same. A quick yes or no, and then I'll ask a question.
No.
I was glad Jeremy said you might not have believed it if I had done. No, by no means the same. Historic enemies, very dagger strong.
Who do the communists belong to? What party in England?
Well, it's a rather recondite consideration, but I can tell you that until the Communist Party contested this election, as it has every election in Britain since the war, getting a total, I think, of about 50,000 votes. I think it's ever done better than that. It had a couple of MPs in 1945. It's never had any since. In the last few years, the British Communist Party has split in two over the question of its relationship to the Soviet Union. And I don't think that those two will long survive. I think actually the epoch of the Communist Party in Britain is pretty much over.
Sure. Go ahead, then we're going to go to a clip.
Sure. What I would like to emphasize is the following. While the Communist Party as an organization is quite separate from the Labour Party, many people who would have views similar to those in the Communist Party are members, and indeed in some cases...
Oh, for fuck's sake! Oh my fucking God. Right, so the Republican Party today is the white supremacist, racist, supporting slavery party then, isn't it?
Leading members of the Labour Party. It was historically the case, say just after the Second World War, that the Labour Party was particularly keen to systematically root out people who, not exactly people who held such views, but certainly people who were suspected of membership of communist parties or other forms of organized Marxist groupings. There has been a decided weakening on this particular point within the Labour Party. Kinnock has himself rallied against the so-called militant tendency, which is a large grouping within the Labour Party who I think can be pretty reliably identified as members of a particular Trotskyist political party. I mean,
no, they're not. They're a socialist party. They're social capitalists. Oh, for fuck's sake. You Americans don't know how to fucking look at fucking things and see the difference in them. You are so fucking black and white.
they themselves would claim that they're no such thing, but I think that's pretty clear. What is striking is that while a number of people on the right of the Labour Party, and while to a certain extent Kinnock himself identified with the wish to do something about this, a good number of very senior people within the Labour Party now take the view that such tendencies within the Labour Party are completely legitimate and that it's not appropriate that any action should be taken against them. So that in this kind of respect, and I don't think that I'm being unfairly partisan here, one can say that while, to be sure, there is this piffling British Communist Party, there are many people of similar views, or in some cases slightly more radically Marxist views, who are indeed members of the Labour Party. And
no, the guy is talking shit.
A certain number of them have now been elected as Labour MPs.
I'd like to talk briefly about the Alliance Party, and then we're going to go to a clip. First of all, besides the Social Democrats and the Liberals, is there anyone else, did I get that right, who's in the Alliance?
No, the Alliance, as it calls itself, it isn't the Alliance Party, as you rightly say. It's just called the Alliance for Convenience.
Yeah, it's the Social Democrats and the Liberal Party that became the Alliance Party.
Is an electoral pact between the old Liberal Party, the historic Liberal Party of Gladstone and Asquith, if you will, that used to, in a sense, be the natural party of government and was eclipsed by Labour in the early part of the century, and the Social Democrats, who also claim to be a party, who are, in the main, people who defected from Labour, complaining of a drift to the left, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, including several former cabinet ministers.
Is this
so
basically a marriage of convenience?
You can join either party, but you won't find that there are in any constituency where one puts up a candidate, the other will. I mean, they have a policy of running in tandem, as it were. Let's
go to that sound clip if we can now.
What was wrong, though, with the alliance?
This is the Liberal Democrats. So you got the Social Democrats and the Liberal Democrats. Social Liberals, as they call it. This is the leader of the Liberal Democrats, I believe, back in the 80s.
Campaign, do you think?
Well, I'm not sure that anything was wrong. I think
Social
the
Democrat,
message that we put across... No, well, you must obviously learn lessons from campaigns, but it's not always. I mean, the main question is...
You got to remember as well, right, after a period of time, this party became the Social Democrat Party, I think. The SDLP, they became the SDLP. And what you've got to remember as well with these people, they were all people from Oxford, Cambridge and all that. They were all highfalutin, well-educated, supposedly, and liberal-minded. But a lot of them were paedophiles and gay and rapists and stuff like that. A lot of them get caught for all kinds of fucking horrible things. And the party self-destructed when, we found that out about them, much like if the Republican Party becomes the party of Trump, all the crazy people who are QAnon and against eating babies and drinking their blood, they're all going to get caught out for being gay, rapist, paedophiles, drug users and and fraudsters. You know what I mean? That's what's going to happen if the Republican Party goes down that road. It's going to implode. It's going to be like the SDLP. It will either split and fracture, or it will implode under the weight of crazy people. Because that's what happened to these people. They went away from the two main parties, formed their own fucking middle of the road party, and then got found out for being rapist, paedophile, and gay, fraudsters, and cheaters, and tax evaders, and all that. They all get caught for all kinds of fucking things.
What was right with the Conservative message? Why does that still manage to hold up? I think the answer is that we didn't come through strong enough to give people confidence to leave the Conservatives. And that's been the problem, that they have clung on. There must be many Conservative voters who haven't exactly liked what Conservative government has been doing, and yet fear or a variety of things has not allowed them to come and vote for us, nor indeed in sufficient numbers for the Labour Party. Neither of us have done well.
Are you personally now prepared to consider a merger with the Liberals?
Well, this is a matter for the members of the party to determine.
But
and
you
they must
personally?
discuss. I'm a Democrat. Our party is the most democratic party it's ever been in this country, and we have one member, one vote ballot.
They did end up joining and became the SDLP. I think it was SDLP they became. Yeah.
Arrangements, and it will be discussed. I don't think myself you should hurry into decisions, immediate solutions. It may appear that that solves all your problems. It also creates many problems. So I don't.
Let me just check here. I don't know why it's getting a GD. SD. Ace. Goes on. Why the fuck have it changed on Mark Thatcher? Economic history. You get Thatcher years, inflation. I don't know why. Okay. Let me right, Social Democrats Party UK, Liberal Party UK, they became the SDP. Okay, Social Democratic Party, the Liberal Party, established 1981, contested 1983 election, 1984 European election, 1987 it was a general election. The SDP Liberal Alliance ceased to exist in 1988. So a year after that, they fucking ran out when two components of the party merged to form the Socialist and Liberal Democrats. Okay, and then Liberal Democrats. Okay, Liberal Democrats, right. Liberal Democrats refer to the Lib Dems as the Liberal Party, Great Britain Party, 11 members, House of Commons, House of Lords, 5 members of Scottish Parliament, Welsh Parliament, London Assembly, coalition government, Conservative Party. Yeah, so they fucking work the Conservatives. Oh. So they're still around, basically. They were in an alliance with fucking the Conservatives in 2010. Right. Oh, where's Parliament? So yeah, so they became the LD, the Lib Dems, the Social Liberal Democrat Party. But yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. A bunch of fucking assholes. I was looking it up because I was, typing something I couldn't spell paedophilia because that's about pedo, but it's actually PEA. PEA, isn't it? Yeah, paedophilia. Not in my area. Paedophilia. I put that into a post somewhere. What was it I was posting about? I might have some political thing, I guarantee. I was posting about paedophiles. Yeah, like these fucking, a lot of the Social Democrats and the Libs.
I think by any means that at this stage one should make
any
firm decision except to say it's a
paedophiles.
perfectly legitimate debate which is bound to go on.
I think he
and
might get
our
done
party
for
will
fucking
be
touching
discussed
kids.
at our Council for Social Democracy, and it will in all probability go to a vote.
What's your assessment of that statement?
Of his statement? Well, the Alliance certainly haven't done very well. In part, I think...
He's getting to say a lot. When are we going to hear Hitchens?
Actually looking a bit more like Abbott and Costello. and the interviewer asked a very proper question of him, which is which party of the other two main parties do you most consider your rival, which you most dislike? And Steele was opening his mouth to say the Tories, and David Owen said Labour because of their defence policy. And Steele just sort of shut his mouth and sank back. Well, that's preposterous.
Mm.
If Owen's answer is correct, I can tell him and tell you. I mean, there's no room for two Tory parties in Britain. We've already got a very, very big one as it is, and very Tory too.
Let's get on El Paso, Texas. You're on.
Yes, sir. I think that the economic problems facing the UK and the US are caused primarily by the competitive prowess of Japan and the Pacific Basin. Do you favor London putting pressure on Washington in allowing those Asian countries to begin footing the bill and taking financial responsibility for their own national defenses?
Thank you.
Nothing to do with us.
I think that when we take the full measure of the disaster that has been the Reagan presidency, we'll be spoiled for choice as to decide which was the stupidest long-run thing that we did. But among them, high on the list will have to be inaugurating a trade war with Japan while trying to urge them to remilitarize. One or the other, sir, but not both. It's going to have the most profoundly horrible consequences. It would be utterly wrong for Europe to have any part of such an insane policy.
Jeremy?
Yes, if I can just comment briefly. First of all, I think that it is most important that one doesn't move towards protectionism. It seems to me that in Japanese products...
He was just saying, fucking 30 minutes ago, how when we came to Europe, he sees a future where America becomes isolationist and depends on itself for its own protection and tries to leave Europe. And now when we come to Japan, he's saying it's damaging for America to think it can become isolation. What the fuck is going on? This cunt is anti-fucking European, this motherfucker.
In certain of the features of Japanese management, from these we've all gained immensely, and I think it would just be extremely short-sighted if we were to attempt to exclude them from our markets. In terms of the assuming the cost of defence, that's a difficult one. I mean, certainly given the misgivings about Japan that still seem to be a very real matter in the Far East, I think that it wouldn't be a very welcome suggestion to consider that they should rearm. Defence costs, possibly, but I think that the important lesson really is to that we should be learning is that we should be keeping our markets open.
He's a marketeer. He's interested in trade. He doesn't understand the connection between trade and defences. Europe is America's first line of defence to the east, right? And Japan, you know what I mean? And Korea, for that matter as well. That's why you're in fucking South Korea. That's your first line of defence in the West. They're going to be the ones that are going to get attacked first. That will give you some kind of warning that something's coming, and you can fucking militarise, but what do you call that when you fucking throw everything in a fucking van and move? You can activate your forces and respond. This is the thing that America, people like this who are fucking, thinking of markets, profits, how much it costs for this, that and the other thing, they don't realise that the reason America spends 9 times as much on its military as the next nation in the world is because you are everywhere in the world. You're everywhere. You know what I mean? And in order for you to, keep that awareness around the world so you can respond if something goes bad that might interact and interfere with your commerce, you need to pay for it. Not fucking Japan, not fucking Europe. If you want us to be that fucking stalwart wall, the first person attacked and can warn you, your early warning system, you need to pay us for that, motherfucker. God damn it.
That we should be willing to learn and to imitate, as indeed the Japanese have done, so that we in turn can top their achievements as they did earlier some of ours.
Burbank, Illinois, you're on.
Hi, I got cut off before. I was wondering about the Reagan-Thatcher chronology on the Falkland Islands and the Grenada thing. I know that we invaded Grenada with 5,000 tough troops and beat up on 600 or so Cuban construction workers that Margaret Thatcher had hired to build an airstrip for the Concorde. I think is probably the case. And the reason we invaded Grenada was because of the killing of Dillon.
Wait, what? You went into Grenada for Margaret Thatcher to build a fucking airstrip for the Concorde? I don't fucking think so, mate.
141 Marines in Lebanon. And then Margaret was upset about that, so Reagan called her up and said, don't worry about it, the American taxpayers will pay for the airport. And also, would you be interested in blowing up some sheep down there in the Falklands? And, you know, for another little PR stunt. I was just wondering if my chronology is right or wrong.
Wrong, though I think I like your mind.
Yeah, totally wrong.
No, I mean, wrong, and not just in chronology. I was in Grenada at the time, and the airport was being built, indeed, with Cuban construction workers at the request of the Grenadian government, which needed an international airport, which the United States government didn't think it ought to be allowed to have, because it said it could be used for military aircraft, and proved the point by landing military aircraft on it and overthrowing the Grenadian government. Or rather, to be absolutely exact, overthrowing the people who'd overthrown the Grenadian government. That was sometime after the Falklands. There was a British objection, in really a matter of amour propre to that invasion, because Grenada is a member of the Commonwealth. Its head of state is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And it was felt that the British should at least have been told.
Yeah, the Americans should have said to us, there's something going on here. The Brits want to come and deal with it. Otherwise, we'll go in. The Americans didn't even ask us. And this is what the Brits and Europeans fucking hate about you as Americans. If we did that on any of your territories, you would be up in arms. Just say, for instance, the British just invaded Puerto Rico to get some cunt that they had been after for years, you know? America would be fucking up in arms. Britain invaded American fucking, you know, well, not a state, but an American, whatever you call it, you know, protectorate or whatever. But you do it all the fucking time. God damn. And you get it wrong when you fucking talk about it.
The American force was going to be used in such a country. The response to that complaint was to say, well, we helped you out over the Falklands, didn't we? Which was really...
No, you didn't help us out of the Falklands. We did it on our own, you motherfuckers.
A non sequitur answer. It wasn't really true, because actually if President Reagan hadn't encouraged General Galtieri and his fascist dictatorship in Argentina to believe that it could get away with anything while Reagan was in power, in return for its helping the death squad movement in Nicaragua and Contras, which it was doing, they wouldn't have ever mustered the arrogance to invade the Falklands in the first place, and we'd all have been spared a great deal of trouble.
I think there were Britons, though, involved in the construction of the airport, I think in the control tower and putting in some systems.
It is true to say that the Grenadian government, which was representing a very underdeveloped country indeed, had foreign aid from Holland, from Switzerland, from Belgium, France, but the crucial matter there was that the Cuban involvement in volunteer labor to build the airport.
Jeremy?
Yes, I recall being in the US just after the British invasion of the Falkland Islands, and was attending actually a talk being given by the American economist Murray Rothbard, and we got onto some of these matters. And I suggested in the...
Yeah, it's a military fucking expert, and he's talking again about fucking commerce. Commerce. What the fuck's that got to do with it? It cost Britain hundreds of millions to go down to the Falklands and defend people who were British citizens. Cost us a fucking fortune. A lot of people in Britain were against us sending ships and planes down there. But these people were British fucking citizens on a far-flung fucking outpost who we had given them the fucking swore to them we would defend them against invasion. So when they were invaded, Britain felt responsible to go and respond. Had nothing to do with making money, We don't make any money out the Falklands. It's the fucking island where they grow sheep. There's like 500 fucking people live there. Got nothing to fucking do with us making millions or billions out of it. There's no fucking oil wells. There's nothing. Just fucking some sheep farms. And he goes and he's talking to someone about commerce. It got nothing to do with commerce.
The end, that possibly the best move that Reagan could make to assure re-election would be to persuade the Cubans to land on Ellis Island and then ceremonially expel them. I didn't believe at the time that someone might have been listening to this and thus putting the US up to this business in Grenada.
Yeah.
We've heard so far from the Alliance, from the Labour Party, and now it's time to hear from the Conservative Party. If we could have that clip now.
What are the policies particularly, do you think, that have
This was
attracted
my old
people to
MP.
the Conservatives once again, apparently?
The strength of the economy.
He was a very good MP.
Our
But, yeah.
openness about our
Arnold Taylor.
proposals in contrast to the deceit of the Labour Party.
No,
and the
I'm
way
mistaken.
in
He
which the
looks
Labour
like the
Party
guy
was
that,
caught
used to
out
be my
time
MP.
and time again, trying to conceal its
No,
policies.
Norman Taylor's an
and
arsehole.
eventually, of course, the incidents of one particular Labour shadow minister becoming very abusive when he was caught out.
You think that incident, you're referring to that with Mr. Healy, are you? That Mr. Healy's incident on TVAM may have had a... What are the policies particularly, do you think, that have attracted people to the Conservatives once again, apparently?
The strength of the economy, our openness about our proposals in contrast to the...
I've got to remember, in 1987, Britain was skint. We were borrowing money from the International fucking Monetary Fund. We were having discussions with the World Trade Organizations about anti-trade things going on between America and some of the places around the world that we traded in, which I think they haven't discussed yet. We have had several fights with America about anti-fucking trade. Because you Americans are fucking really good at going in there and fucking rewriting trade agreements and fucking people over. And our government was so shite it fucking didn't do anything about it. I think the problem you were having at the time was coal from South America and stuff like that. We were having problems with America. Yeah, it was, you know, anti fucking something trade deals or something like that. The Americans were trying to buy out coal and ship it to Asia, and we had already bought the coal, something like that. Something's going on. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was something to do with that. America had tried to we had already bought coal for years, right, for delivery to Britain, and some American fucking coal company had decided to step in there, outbid us, and say we'll pay you more for the coal, and they had started taking coal that we needed and putting it in ships and taking it to Asia. And it was an antitrust or some fucking thing. It went through the World Trade and Britain won. We got the rights to fucking tell them to stop fucking doing it. And I think we got so many 100 million fucking paid back. And it kind of like bolstered Britain. But I mean, it wasn't, they weren't fucking, keeping the economy fucking going.
The deceit of the Labour Party and the way in which the Labour Party was caught out time and time again trying to conceal its policies, and eventually, of course, the incidents of one particular Labour shadow minister becoming very abusive when he was caught out.
You think that incident, you're referring to that with Mr. Healy, are you? That Mr. Healy's incident on TVAM may have had a real effect on the poll?
Well, I think it just sharpened the point that we were making, that there is a great element of deceit and hypocrisy in the Labour Party. It underlined it.
What about the position of Mrs. Thatcher? What would you say?
Let me just check something. Oh, about Charles, and they didn't get Charles, British MPs. not voting for. Argue complaint against MPs and hello. Some misconduct. Oh, this. Nah, I don't know. Oh God, it's hard to get back to, cause that's present day. I thought they've got it all scored. They don't want you to fucking know. Women, corruption, conservative, cartel, Tories, false Queen's British MP awards himself £10,000, record of members of Parliament in the United Kingdom, put behaviour bad with some British governments. They're not going to let me fucking look up. Oh, well, I've got that spelled fucking wrong. Is that going to help me? A dossier of paedophile awards associated with British government and associated with British members of Parliament Geoffrey Dickens, Home Secretary Leon Britton, the Home Office, well, David Cameron wasn't, Party, Matt said, well, that's just saying, you know, right, so, but dossier. Something suggested by Britain a letter Dickens in the file. With the given to the police, however, the police later stated they had no record of any investigation into the allegations there, because this is typical of fucking what happens in Britain. They do a fucking investigation, they say they pass it to the police, they never pass the dossier to the police, so that these people don't know who to go investigate. And then it goes on and on and on, and then it takes fucking 20 years before we find out that these people get fucking caught. John Tebbit, who had a variety of ministerial posts in the 1980s, was asked if there had been a big political cover-up, said that there may well have been, described it as almost unconscious. It was a thing that people did at the time. Tebbit also spoke of political atmosphere of the time, saying that at the time, I think most people would have thought that the establishment, the system, was to be protected, and if a few things had gone wrong here and there, it was more important to protect the system than to delve into too far into it. That view, I think, was wrong when it is spectacularly shown to be wrong by the abuses have grown. Right, so these people got caught eventually. They're not giving us any of their fucking names. But Tebbit, the guy we were just listening there, talking, you know, yeah, the same fucking guy though, isn't it? That's him there. And that's him now. You're an old man now. Right, so he's the sort of man who would turn around and say fucking anything for his party. A lot of these people, I mean, a lot of them never get caught until they're dead. This is the fucking problem with this, you know what I mean? These were people had made claims and talked about these people back in the fucking early 80s, and in the 2000s is when some of this stuff came to light and went to court. And most of them are dead by that time, and you can't take a dead man to court. You might take somebody to court when they're not in office anymore, but you can't take a dead man to court. He's not there to answer for himself. So a lot of these cases were just dropped. Paedophile cases, rape cases, sexual assault cases. The people were dead by the time that we could get them into court. 30, 40 years these cunts had this shit. So, anything these people fucking say
was her contribution to the success, bearing in mind how much has been made of her position as leader and as the person for whom people vote or don't?
Well, I think she and I and our colleagues and all the Conservative Party workers in the country made it between us. And I think that's the right way to look at it. A team effort. She led it, and the rest of us backed her up. And the voters so far on these indications seem to have given her a vote of approval.
Chris, you agree with that assessment?
More than I'd like, because I find Tebbit a uniquely detestable character. I wish I had the local knowledge to be sure of what he means by the Dennis Healey incident, and Jeremy may know, but I can imagine what it must be. It must be that Dennis Healey, who is spokesman for foreign and defence policy for the Labour Party, is known not to be as keen on disarmament as Kinnock is, and I expect that kind of came out. The truth is that I think Labour did rather try and run a non-political campaign. Tried to run without taking any of the sharp issues directly.
Like the Democrats do
where
in
they might
America.
hurt or might pinch or might reveal party splits. Did tell people to vote Kinnock rather than vote Labour. And found that there is a sort of scepticism in the electorate that doesn't respond to that, that knows when it's being given a soft sell. Probably we would have done no worse to run on a left programme honestly than to be suspected of having one and pretending not to.
If I could comment on that, it seems to me, taking up Tebbett's point, that if one asks what really in Britain has contributed to the strength of the economy, I think that the big achievement of the present Thatcher government has been to check.
Again, this guy doesn't go to policy. He doesn't go to what the government has done for the people of Britain. It goes to, oh, they made money. You know, the stock market went up. Billionaires became richer. You know, it's an economic posture this guy's got, and that's the only view he's got of any government is how well financially the country as a whole is doing, and by a whole they mean the top fucking 1%. It's never about the people, never about policy. It's not about changing government policy in order to make it better and easier for people to climb the ladder and get out of poverty. It's all about, well, what they did to stabilise the economy and stop banks from losing money and billionaires from losing money. No, that's all he talks about, man.
The power of the British trade unions, which had had a particularly conservative force, which would represent a particularly conservative force in the sense of making innovation difficult and of really making it very, very difficult for management to manage.
No, they weren't making it difficult for companies to innovate. They were complaining that companies were innovating in factories that were building overseas. They were complaining that they were holding down the wages of people in Britain, not modernising their factories, and employing people overseas for a quarter of the fucking wage or a third of the wage a day. This is what the Labour was complaining about, and it bore out because that's exactly what happened over the next 20, 30 years. They gradually reduced any income. People were on the inflation rate of 2.3%, and people were getting a 1.2% rise a year in their wages, not even keeping up with inflation. Whilst they were investing billions overseas to build factories and employ people in foreign countries. This is what the Labour the Labour unions in Britain were complaining about, and he's saying, oh, they were stifling innovation. They were never going to modernise that factory. They were never going to put any money into that factory. They were looking to shut that factory down in 10 years once they built their factories overseas and they started to see the produce pour into British ports. They were spending billions, investing billions in building new fucking ports, new cranes to fucking unload all that stuff. And yes, there's a few people getting, new jobs in the ports, but it wasn't any of the fucking steel workers or the fucking factory workers or the coal workers that this guy's talking about. They were setting up to unload the coal at the ports, and as that steeped up and we could reduce the coal, they sacked men in the coal mines and then shut them down and let them flood. Never be able to get that coal now. The mines are flooded. It costs too much to pump the water out of it. But we can just bring in the dirty brown coal from South America. We had black coal. It burnt fucking and gave off worse fumes. Now we're buying brown coal from fucking South America. Who gives a fuck? More fumes into the atmosphere. Let's make sure the regulations don't go on and make us capture fucking carbon and all that. This is what was going on in Britain over the last 30, 40 years, 50 years now, And in America you were doing the fucking same thing. This fucking asshole, man.
For investment to go into areas that were profitable. and for Britain really to respond to changes elsewhere in the world economy. The problem concerning the Labour Party, and in a sense what I think that people in Britain may have considered to be the hidden question, or the one that didn't really come out, is whether the Labour Party, if it had got back into power, was really intending to restore to the British trade union movement not only the privileges that had been removed from that trade union movement by the Conservative Party, but also added power in terms of an ability to have a big say in the direction in which investment in industry would go in Britain. The problem is really this, that to talk about rights for workers is really extremely attractive. To complain about the poor record of British companies in investing in capital in Britain is again, a very striking point to be made. The difficulty really is that the British trade union movement has I think, it would be difficult to get anyone much to disagree, has really been an extremely unhelpful force in terms of Britain's responses to changes in the world.
You heard him say it, just exactly what I said. Yes, you can argue that there was a lack of investment in the British fucking economy, the British coal mining industry, the British steel industry. We can argue that there was a lack of investment in the workers, training them up, upgrading the sort of steel furnaces to electric, and stuff like that. We invented the fucking, electric fucking furnace, steel furnace here in Britain. And we sold it to fucking the Asians and built those out overseas. And when the British worker working in the fucking steel industry found out what was going on, they fucking rose up and went on strike and tried to force them to fucking invest in Britain. And what they did is they put the strikes down by saying you can't fly in fucking strikers for other places, so you can't get everybody in strike across the country to come to one place and have one big giant huge fucking, not riot, but one giant huge sort of like display of of what was going on. They froze the fucking union bank accounts. They started to arrest union leaders and throw them in jail. I mean, it was just ridiculous what happened through the 80s, you know what I mean? And in the 90s, it just, look, this guy, he spoke it out his own mouth, and you see he's looking down and saying, oh, this happened here, he can't argue it. But you can't say that, well, the unions were, and the fucking unions were the organisational fucking side of the working man. That was their fucking job, was to organise the working man to fight against this fucking lack of investment. This known idea that we're going to shut your factories down in 10 years when we've built all this stuff overseas with the billions of pounds being fucking sucked out of you, and then we're going to leave you on the fucking streets, poor and desolate. When people fucking heard and understood what was going on, they rose up and struck. They went on strike and fucking said, no, we can't have that. The government's going to step in and make these fucking companies fucking invest in Britain. And the British Conservative government says, we could do that, but we're not going to. You know what I mean? That's what fucking happened, man. The government went against its own people in support of these companies who wanted to invest overseas.
But the Labour Party, because of its extremely close ties to the trade union movement, in fact, historically, having been really the creature of the trade union movement, couldn't, if re-elected, but I think make considerable concessions to what the leaders of the British trade union wanted, and I think that in this manner, what I guess most people would see as really an enormously important contribution that the present Conservative government has made, that would really be dissipated.
Let's go to Vail, Colorado. You're on.
Good evening.
Again, they let him say all that, and I haven't heard what Hitchens has got to say about it. Did they cut that out, or What happened? Why is Hitchens not get anything to fucking say about any of this fucking shit? Fucking America, man. It's like fucking the BBC now. They bring two people on. One guy gets to talk for fucking 45 minutes. The other guy you hear him for like 37 seconds, and that's it. You know, and it's like, so where's the two sides of the fucking story here?
My question, gentlemen, was regarding the policies of the Labour Party. It strikes me that over the last few years, they don't really appear to have had any. Would you agree with this?
No.
Well, I just finished saying that I thought they tried to run an unpolitical presidential type campaign. So I grant your point to that extent, or the implied point of your question. But
yeah, they don't talk about the policies, but
it's
they
not
had
the allegation
policies.
most commonly made. The allegation most commonly made against them is that they're too much encumbered with policies that are too specifically identifiable by the voters and are thought to be policies that, in the case of the trade unions, are condemned by history, i.e. an antiquarian attachment to an old form of trade unionism. Or in the case of defense, arouse the concern, groundless in my opinion, that without nuclear weapons Britain wouldn't be defendable or defended. But these are the policies and these are the reasons why Labour tried to run a non-political campaign. Don't think it would justify you in saying that they didn't have any.
They had policies that didn't
I'd like
like
to
to
briefly
talk about.
just switch to British television. There are no paid political advertisements allowed on.
No.
They're only 4 weeks in the campaign.
6.
Yeah, have to be minimum of 3.5 weeks, I think it is.
So what is coverage like?
Well, it's saturation, but it's subject to what's known by the BBC and others as a balance rule. If you interview on your BBC News Bulletin the leader of the Labour Party, you've got to have the equal...
Something this fucking TV programme didn't do. Equal fucking time.
time for the Tory party. It's been complicated by the presence of a third party which contains two parties, but in some proportion to support, in their case, they get equal time too. You can't buy TV time for politics. Your election address...
See, what we get in Britain is on a Tuesday you'll get like a 10-minute political advert, you know, a political statement by the Conservative Party on a Tuesday, you know, 10 minutes before 9 o'clock, before the 9 o'clock news. So you get 10 minutes of the Conservatives coming on and saying, oh, people Britain, blah, 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 this is what we think, right. And then on the Thursday you would get like 10 minutes before 9 o'clock news at night. A Labour Party 10 minutes, free. It's paid for by the government, they don't pay for it, and they get 10 minutes to say what they want. So you listen to the Labour Party, oh, people of Britain, blah, 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 Labour this, Labour that. You know, the terrible Tories, da, da, da. Right. And I suppose on a Wednesday night before 9 o'clock you would have got a Liberal Democrat when they were, you know, if they were high enough, if they were getting over 5% in the polls, they would get a 10-minute. But if they were at 2%, they wouldn't get that 10-minute. You have to meet a threshold before you're entitled to get paid, you know, government money to put out. But that's it, and you would get every week. You would, you know, for 3 weeks or whatever, you would get that, you know, 10-minute before 9 o'clock. Tuesday Conservatives, Thursday Labour. Next week Tuesday would be Labour, Thursday would be Conservatives. Next week Tuesday would be Conservatives, Thursday would be Labour, and that'd be it, you know. And you know, then you've got to go and vote. But you're getting all this shit through the post. Fucking hundreds of fucking, you know, flyers and all that about your local fucking Conservative guy, your local Lib Dem, your local Labour, your local Green Party. You know, I mean, there's hundreds of parties. The Raven Looney fucking party, all kinds of fucking parties. You know, there's the OAP party, and you know, there's, you know, old age pensioners party. People are vying for, you know, we need to raise the pension and all that. You know, so there's individual tiny little parties, and they all put flyers through your door. And you, so for like 3 to 4, 5, 6 weeks, you're getting, you know. But it's about a 6-week campaign, but the last 3 weeks is when it heats up. I don't know how you Americans put up with it fucking every week for fucking, you know, 2 years. Every 2 years you got to go and vote. So for 2 years you get fucking bombarded, and then for another 2 years you get bombarded. And then, you know, it's like, oh, that would. No wonder you're all fucking crazy over there.
That's each candidate's own manifesto
Mm.
in his or her own constituencies, given out free twice, once when the campaign begins and once on eve of poll. So there's no money to be spent on enlightenment that way. All these are reforms that, as you can see, are urgently needed in the United States.
I understand there's a great emphasis, too, on polls.
Lately, yes.
Is there any way to get away from that? I know that's a complaint you hear in the United States,
Yeah.
that reporters don't want to talk about issues. They want to talk about polls, and that question keeps coming up in news conferences. How do you get away from that?
Well, one way in which you might start to get away from it is by reflecting on the accuracy of the polls most recently. I mean, we're in a situation where the...
No, it doesn't matter. You can say at the beginning of any fucking segment you're going to show polls that, well, we don't know whether these numbers are correct. But then somebody comes in from the kitchen drinking their coffee, you've already said that, and now they're showing polls, and they sit down and they see the polls. Unless you've got a banner going across saying that none of these polls can be taken seriously, they're all a load of shit, so don't pay attention. In fact, if that's what you're going to say, but why put the polls on the TV in the first fucking place? This is my argument with America. If all this shite is just shite, why are you spending millions of fucking dollars to collect this data and then shove it in the face of Americans on their TV every fucking night for 2 fucking years? Who cares? You know what I mean? It just filled up with, so-and-so's dog got lost and then they found it. Segment. A feel-good fucking segment. Instead of fucking poll segments. America would be less stressed out and less worried about what fuck's going on with the politics if you just did a happy dog found story instead of a fucking poll. God damn it.
The Conservative Party has picked up a majority of over 100, when no one expected that, especially those people who are being guided by the polls. One has also got the gradual emergence in Britain of a great deal of patchiness in terms of response. I mean, that's to say, even from an overall knowledge of what the percentage of the votes was that the Conservatives have picked up, the Labour Party have picked up, and so on, it was extremely difficult to make predictions. What this then means is that one gets polls going for much more particular preferences, and especially going for what may be important factors in particular marginal seats. I'm not sure, though, that would have the same... I mean, that would be watched with great care, and certainly is watched with great care by the people who are planning the campaigns.
The people in Britain don't watch anything with great care. We watch the news, and when they start saying, oh, these are the recent polls for Conservative and Labour, people go and put the kettle on. We're not watching. You know what I mean? You might yourself, here's the most recent polls, and then show a video of someone making a big cake. You know what I mean? They're going to be whipping the fucking cream. You know what I mean? Going to be adding the flour, adding the fruit, the raisins. Pouring it out into a fucking tray, a big cake tray, and then they're going to put it onto a baking tray and put it in the oven. And then you're going to fast forward, and then they take it out and then cover it with a beautiful cake. They're going to put fucking icing on it and draw a name, put some candles in it. You know what I mean? You might as well do that in a 3-minute segment, right? And then fucking say to people, that's the polls for tonight. British people would probably start watching your TV show after that. People like, oh my God, this is the best poll fucking video I've ever fucking seen. Because us Brits are like that. We love that sarcastic, taking the piss out of politicians kind of shit. You Americans seem to think it's really important what the polls say. None of it fucking matters. Because most of the people polled are on a fucking phone or, everybody's got them on fucking dial-up. It's the same fucking people every fucking year. They're all going to say the same fucking thing. Nobody ever phones me for a fucking poll. I've never been polled in my life. Never. I'm 59-year-old, never been polled in my life about anything. Right? So what the fuck? And most people in America got to be like that as well. You know what I mean? This is a poll of 50,000 people. America's got 330 million people in it. You're polling 50,000 people in a country of 330 million. How many people are getting called? So why should we pay any fucking attention to those 50,000 who are probably the same people you phone every fucking year? So nothing's going to change. You're not giving us a real sample of America. You're giving a sample of the sample that you took fucking for the last fucking 50 years. You want to change numbers when somebody dies and doesn't answer, for fuck's sake.
For the political parties, it wouldn't, I think, be quite as newsworthy in terms of the media. So,
polls are not newsworthy. What the fuck is this guy? It wouldn't be as newsworthy. Polls are not newsworthy. Nobody gives a fucking damn. You know what I mean? We fucking sit there and we get these fucking ticker tape fucking shit, of course, the bolting that you fucking use in America. We fucking get them stuck in front of it. We get graphs. They tell us all this in it. You get fucking Kanaki up there pointing fucking clicking buttons on a big wide fucking screen, yeah, and telling us all kinds of fucking shit that we don't understand. That he's worked out in his fucking, you know, I don't know, cyborg fucking brain, and we're supposed to believe all that shit. Fuck off.
Unless the polls in a way can get their own act together a little bit better, and may, I guess, in the end get a certain de-emphasis on their importance.
Let's go to Baltimore, Maryland. You're on.
Yes, I'd just like to get down to the average person in Britain. What chance is a young person coming out of, say, I'll just use an American example, say a secondary high school, have of learning a trade and earning a decent living, so maybe in the future he can support a family and so on, just, you know, to live comfortably? That's my only question.
Zero fucking percent.
Before Mrs. Thatcher's been in office and after.
Thank you.
0 fucking percent.
The chances of such a person have been greatly reduced by Thatcher, because it's been a notorious thing in Britain, where you're born and to whom makes too much difference to your life chance. And that's been a criticism of our country for a long time. I wouldn't say Thatcher made it any better. And it's very noticeable that the 3.5 million or so people currently unemployed, which is to say roughly 11 to 12% of the workforce, are either people who are from aging industries which nobody knows what to do about, or from the school leaving bracket. That's to say, either people who will never work again, or people who've never had a job yet. And those are the two things that make it such a depressing problem. It's not a seasonal or cyclical unemployment, you see. It's becoming a permanent, workless underclass. And that was Labour's big attempted theme in the campaign, and though it didn't work, it won't go away.
They listened to them.
Jeremy?
It's certainly tough on people in such a situation. If they're living in London and the South East, they can probably get employment. They're going to face many more difficulties in finding somewhere that they can afford to live. If they're in northern cities, particularly those which have had a tradition of large-scale manufacturing employment, then the situation is extremely tough. The Conservative Party has put an enormous amount of effort into various kinds of youth training schemes, and they...
No, they haven't. No. I've seen all these fucking youth training schemes come and go since the 70s. I'm 59. I've watched this shit happen for 40 fucking 2 years. Yes, you know what they do? They turn around and say, YOP scheme. We will pay someone to employ a young person leaving school. They don't have to pay them a wage. They don't have to pay them a wage. The government will give them an extra £10 for bus fares to and from the place of work if someone will employ them, and they get their unemployment check. So basically, you're a slave. You're an indentured slave. You're working for your dole money, your I think in America you call it Social Security money. You're working for your Social Security money plus $10, say, for bus fare to get to your place of work and back. That's it. That's your YOP fucking scheme. So that person says, oh, I'll employ some YOPs. So he gets 3 people, he can sack 3 people and employ 3 YOPs. He's not paying their wages, but they're coming in and working for him. They're doing these 3 people are doing the job of the 3 people who used to be employed. Now, Margaret Thatcher, she said you can only have them for 6 months, and then you either have to employ them or sack them. And these people would say, oh, that's fine, yeah. So they employ you for 6 months, And then they say, I'm not going to employ you. And then they get another 3 in. And then for another 6 months, they have another 3 young people just left school. You know what I mean? And they work for the dough money and a tenner. And then they sack them and get another thing. This is what companies did for fucking years under Thatcher. Youth training schemes, my fucking arse. They were training you to go back on the fucking dole after you'd worked for 6 months, making somebody a lot of money that they didn't have to pay a full paid employee because the government was paying you dole money and a tenner to get there. That was it.
They now have moved to a situation where they're guaranteeing people vacation-related training for a couple of years after leaving school for anyone who can't otherwise get employment. What does one do? Say more effort is to be put into that?
Vocational related training, you go to a college, you know, your local college. Yes. Again, you're not getting paid. You're not getting any housing benefit. You're paid your dole money. You need to be living with your parents or your mother or your father. You need to be living in a household. And because you've got to have an address to get your check sent out. And they will give you, I think it's a monthly bus pass to get you to college and back for a month. But no money, no extra money. Your dole check, they send that to you, but you get a monthly bus pass to get you to the college and back. And that's it. That's what people were getting. This was the training. And yes, you could go to college and take a college course. But the thing is, a lot of these college courses, you would go there and it was like painting and decorating. Paint and decorating. It wasn't a skill that people needed. Why weren't they doing a full-time course of electronics? Or, you know, gas engine, you know, gas, what do you call it? What do you call that? You know, like your gas burner, you know, your gas burners in the house. Why weren't they teaching them plumbing? Any of these courses were you know, forced on you. You could fucking do anything. So yes, people went to college and they did fucking art classes, guitar classes, social fucking media classes. Didn't learn anything about computers. No. Didn't learn anything about coding. They didn't learn anything about electronics. Social media, it was all about standing up and speaking in front of cameras and writing scripts. And never learned how to use a camera. It wasn't a media course. Social media, how to interact in front of... Yeah, so you become a good speaker. And these people all went out and fucking did that for fucking 2 years or something like it. And they got a shitty fucking certificate that nobody wanted. It's probably great new for Netflix and fucking all that, you know. But back then, in the 70s, 80s, there was no fucking social media back then. It was a very young, early thing, but no, guitar, learn the guitar. Oh, god damn. I remember some of the people said they were studying fucking, what do you call them? Bananarama. Doing a 2-year course on Bananarama and their songs. Doing a 2-year course on ABBA. What the fuck? God damn it.
It's a mighty difficult situation. I mean, just because one is faced in such people with competition, certainly in many of their traditional forms of employment that they might have looked to, with the developing economies who in many cases have moved into just those areas where in the previous generation these young people would have been employed. All I'd say about it...
It's more of a problem if you're a government that believes that unemployment is a good thing because it can be used to discipline the trade unions and the wage earners, and that therefore the threat of the dole queue will discipline the labour market. And that
this was the thing he's saying now. This was the thing Thatcher used. There's 3.5 million people unemployed. You don't want to fuck up your fucking employment. You don't want to speak back to your boss. You don't want to argue about men money and raises. You don't want to go on strike because you're going to find yourself in the door with 3.5 million people fighting for a job. They used it to bludgeon people in Britain into fucking sitting still in their shitty jobs and not fucking complaining. That's what Thatcher did.
And uses that as the main instrument for the labour market. That's not a government saying, what do we do about unemployment? That's a government saying, we want enough unemployment to be able to do this.
Do you think that if Mrs. Thatcher could, she would not have produced for this election a really radical decline in unemployment figures?
She had the opportunity and she did nothing about it. My God, she squandered billions of fucking pounds of oil money keeping people on the dole. Rather than actually putting them into full-time education, like I fucking talked about at the beginning of this fucking video, or the first part. She could have paid people to do full-time fucking 2-4-year college courses, become doctors, become nurses, become fucking electricians, plumbers, joiners. She could have paid for people to become fucking, you know, expert in fields of fucking math, physics, go on to a degree. She could have fucking paid for that with the fucking money of keeping them on the dole. She didn't. She was happy to just fucking keep them on the dole. For almost 6 fucking years. She wasted fucking Northern Oil, the oil for the North Sea, just paying for fucking unemployment benefit instead of educating people. What the fuck?
I'll take the corollary and say that yes, they tried for the election, to use their own words, to bring the figures down, mainly by creative bookkeeping. But I will say that the original creation of unemployment was in large measure conscious and deliberate. Yes, it was the means by which they did something you were just praising, which was bring the trade unions under control.
I'd like to add one other thing. 3 blacks were elected to Parliament. I understand this is a first.
I was just about to say, and it's even worse if you're young and black. Much higher chance of getting unemployed. Yeah, it's not a first historically, because there were a couple of Indians in the 20s, including a man called Behram Saklatvala, who, as well as being the first Indian and the first Parsi, was also the first communist ever elected to the British House of Commons. Other than that, this is a first, yes, all Labour, I think all in London.
Yes, that's right. The Tories
can claim to have had the first Jewish Prime Minister, the first bachelor Prime Minister, and the first female Prime Minister. So their record isn't that bad, but it'll go hard for them to get any serious black candidate. They've made too many appeals to racial prejudice, in either subliminally or directly in the past, to attract the constituency necessary.
If I can come in on that, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Asian Tory MPs fairly soon. I mean, there are a number of people who are contesting.
It's a minor disgrace that a party...
Yeah, you're talking about Indian because they come over here. They're already rich people. A lot of these Indians come over. They're already rich people. They came in. I knew a lot of Indians in Glasgow. They came over here and they brought their money from India because they were going to get fucked in India, lose all their money. So the dad came over here with a brother or two, got into Britain. They bought fucking buildings all over fucking Glasgow, rented them out. They bought shops, corner shops, worked their fucking asses off. Don't get me fucking wrong, they worked their fucking asses off. Eventually brought their sons and daughters and their wives over, the sons' wives, employed them to run the shops. They set up fucking, what do you call them, warehouses, sort of import-exports. They set that up. But don't get me wrong, these Indians, they worked their fucking asses off, right? But the reason that he's saying, I'll see Indian politicians in the Conservative Party, yeah, because they're fucking rich already. This was a movement of rich people from countries that used to be British, so they've got a passport, they can fucking just move right in here. And this is one of the things that you see. Look, I'm not racist, but what I'm saying is, this is what stirred up a lot of the poor, unemployed white people in fucking England. They seen all these Indians and Pakistanis come over and take over all their corner stores. They're renting their houses for these people who they seen as foreigners from a foreign country. Now they're the landlord. And that's what happened through the 80s and 90s. I'm not saying it's terrible. What I'm saying is these people seen it as terrible. I couldn't give a fuck, right? Me, I went out and worked my fucking ass off. I did what I had to fucking do to make money. I loved the jobs that I did. The jobs that I didn't like, I quit as fucking soon as I found out that I didn't like them. But what I'm saying is, when you have a huge influx of people like that from a foreign nation into a country that's already beleaguered by fucking unemployment and poor white people, it's not surprising that you're going to get a rise in fucking fascism and racism. It's just not surprising. And that government that we had back in the 80s, like that, they fucking instigated it. They fucking instigated it. Same now, you know, the 90s and 2000s, you've seen a huge influx of fucking gangsters for fucking Europe and South America and Russia coming in and buying up multi-million-dollar homes all over London. You know what I mean? That's when you have these foreigners come in like that, the British people are looking and going, what the fuck? You're like, these cunts on you won't give me a penny? This is what goes on. I mean, I don't like the way that these people think. I don't like the racism, but I can understand it in a way. I fight against it myself. I say, no, you can't think like that. I argue with my family because, you know what I mean? I've got a family of people. They see it. They fucking are aggravated by it. And I say, you can't, it's no them, it's the government. But they look at the person who's fucking doing it in front of them. They don't, the government's just they're away down there in the big house somewhere, you know. It's like, they don't blame it. But I blame the fucking government for it, you know. I don't blame the people that came in. They're just people moving from one place to another to try and make a better life for themselves. I can totally understand that. I blame the government that fucking allowed that and left their own people to fucking, you know, scurry about in the dirt, right? I don't blame any of these people that came here and bought up property and bought shops and worked their asses off. That's fucking hard work, right? The fact that we never educated our kids and put them through school and taught them fucking economics, taught them fucking how to start a business, taught them anything about the law, taught them anything about electronics, plumbing. You know what I mean? Now we've got fucking people from all over the Eastern Bloc, you know what I mean, coming over. We've got plasterers, electricians, plumbers, you know what I mean, all come over, bricklayers, all come over from the Eastern Bloc, taking up all the construction jobs and all the British people all up in arms about that. Yeah, but that's your government. You know what I mean? They didn't fucking educate us to fucking do what they said, oh, go out there and, you know, start a business. How the fuck do you start a business? Who knows how to start a business when they're fucking 17 leaving school? You've never been taught anything about economics, you've never taught anything about how to fucking start a business. You've never been showed how to apply to fucking start a business. Right? That's something they could fucking teach in school. Fuck me.
Party with the ability to elect MPs at the Conservative Party hasn't done that already. I repeat, the fact is there's not enough black and brown people will vote Tory because they know very well that the Conservative appeal has been venomously opposed to the settlement of black and brown people.
You know what I mean? You get people that come over from a foreign country who have already owned a business in their country. They know, oh, there's some agency I've got to touch with. So they come here, they get a lawyer, say, oh, like, tell me, how do you apply for this form? How do you apply for that? Oh, is there any other forms I need to apply for? Would I counsel that? Okay, yeah. You know, what does a fucking British person learn? They're leave school at fucking 17. They don't know shite. They don't know who to go and talk to. They've got no money. They just left school. They've got like fucking £75 in their bank if they've got that. You know what I mean? Somebody comes from a foreign country with, you know, £100,000, £200,000 in the bank. You know what I mean? They've got the opportunity to fucking, you know, manoeuvre through the fucking ins and outs of it, fill in the right forms, buy a property and set a shop up. And then they've got all these friends that they know who are doing import-export. The day deals with them, they're speaking the same language. British guy goes down there, it gets ripped off, you know what I mean? This is what I'm saying, you know? It just, people felt it was unfair what was going on through the 80s and 90s. And it was, to a lesser or a greater extent. It was unfair that these people who lived in this country didn't even know how to fucking set a shop up coming out of school. Had never been taught anything about fucking economics and how to fucking manoeuvre through the infrastructure that they live under. Just ridiculous, man.
We are almost out of time. I'd like to take at least one more call. San Rafael, California, you're on.
Hello. I have two questions, one to do with devolution and the other one to do with the future of the Labour Party. The first one to do with devolution is, it would seem to me this election has proved that the United Kingdom is no longer that. And does that not seem to suggest there's a need for some kind of limited devolution for both Scotland and Wales? The second question to do with the future Labour Party is, do you think that there's going to be a serious disintegration of the Parliamentary Labour Party, with a lot of votes going to the SDP and the Labour Alliance, and the mainstream Labour going further and further to the left?
If I can come in on this to start off with, the United Kingdom no longer united. Certainly the Tories have done particularly badly in Scotland, although that's in some ways to be explained by the very particular quality of the Conservative Party in Scotland, where, to put it bluntly, they tended to put up the younger, the sort of second son of a local laird or a merchant banker from London, and where particularly, I suppose, the middle-class, slightly aggressive style of the Thatcher government and of those people who've been attracted to it has just rubbed the Scots up the wrong way. In my view, things have obviously gone very badly. I would have thought that that's more a matter of rethinking for the Conservative Party in Scotland than something which is a complete write-off. Devolution, it's difficult. I mean, for a supporter of the Conservative Party, in some ways it's extremely tempting on the grounds that if there was devolution in Scotland and Wales, then Britain, there would hardly be any point in having further elections in England, on the grounds that there'd be a perpetual Conservative majority. In terms of the dissolution of the Parliamentary Labour Party, I would have thought not. I would have thought that things are likely to stay pretty much as they are. Maybe slightly over time increases in the influence of some of the more radical elements in the party, but when it comes to an election, there'll be increasing need to produce either Kinnock or a sort of slightly smartened up version of Kinnock with a bit more hair and possibly a little younger and sort of dancing over the cliffs, no, not over the cliffs, but dancing across the cliffs as opposed just to walking. Chris?
It's true that Tories are as rare as rocking horse droppings in Scotland and Wales, but that's always been true. And devolution, you can't derive devolution from that. You either think that Scotland and Wales could be states as well as nations, or you don't. And I think it's a foolish belief. The area, or province, you might say, of the kingdom that Jeremy didn't mention was Ulster, where I'm not quite certain what the results were, but where there is now an extraordinary disaffection from central government by the Conservative voters, who are, in this case, the Orange Ulster Unionists and Protestants. And I think their disaffection from the Conservative cause is now pretty much complete.
The Conservative
that might be the one to watch.
Conservative only in a very particular sense. I mean, they're Conservative in the sense of keeping up to their own traditions. They're Conservative in the sense that there was an earlier alliance with the Conservatives. But I think surely you'd agree that that both of the traditions in Northern Ireland are in a way utterly foreign to anything to be found in mainland England, although there are certain echoes, particularly in the politics of the west of Scotland.
Well, Ireland is another country. It's a recognition we've yet to come to.
Also, though, in terms of Scotland, it does seem to me that one mustn't put Scotland on a par with Wales, because there's the different Scottish legal traditions, the different, very different and distinctive culture in Scotland. Is something which I think it would certainly be possible to think of as having a much greater degree of autonomy, if not independence. Whereas if one looks at Wales, a large sections of Wales are completely anglicised, and the Welsh nationalists themselves are mostly operating in rural backwaters.
Sure.
I'm just going to say, it's getting to the end today anyway, so I'll just stop it here and I'll just finalise this and saying, this was 1987, and now in 2021, Scotland has a devolved parliament. We're not free by any means, but we have a devolved parliament. Wales has a devolved parliament. Ireland, the one that he thought was going to be the one that would break away from Britain, they've had a split parliament for many years, and in fact their parliament didn't sit for a whole year because the politicians couldn't agree with each other as to who would have majority in the House. So yes, you know, the Irish are still a problem. They always will be. They're as individual to Britain as Scotland is. The fact that he, rather than Hutchins, seen the fact that Scotland was individual compared to Wales, and yet, you know, Hutchins says he couldn't see anything happening up there, but Scotland does have a parliament of its own, and it was the first country in Britain to get its own devolved parliament, before Wales, before Ireland. But now all three countries have a somewhat devolved parliament, and Westminster, although still the capital, the main government house of Britain, is definitely less than it was in 87 when these people were speaking. I never liked a lot of what this man said. He seems to me to be too orientated on capitalist motivations, what a country's worth is, how it manages its money for the benefit of commerce and not the people. Hutchins never really got enough to say. You know, whenever this guy spoke, I expected Hutchins to have a minute or two to speak. We never seen that. So I don't know whether they cut it out or whether Hutchins just didn't have anything to say, because the guy often spoke about commerce, and Hutchins is not a great brain about, you know, the commerce of a nation. More about the Enlightenment, the philosophy, and perhaps some of the political motivations behind certain people, but not really a broad stroke commercial person, you know. So I was a bit disappointed with what Hutchins had to say, or whether he did say it was cut out, I don't know. This guy I didn't really like. I think it was too commercially orientated. But having said that, it was a nice little talk from 1987, and we didn't talk a lot about America. There was a few things in there, but you know, maybe you could go over it. Maybe, you know, listen to what these people said, and then compare the world they were explaining in 87, what they thought might happen, you know, in the future, even if they're only talking like the next election. And then compare what these people were thinking, both Hutchins and this guy and the speaker and the people who phoned in, and compare it to today, where many of the things people phoned in about haven't changed, but a lot of what this guy and what Hutchins said have completely changed. And maybe give me a little comment to tell me what you think. Anyway, so you fucking bad motherfuckers. I'm going to go now and get drunk and do my thing. Anyway, Sandy fucking bad, and I'll see you.